Ms. Burnett?
Here.
Mr. Schweitzer?
Here.
Mr. Mann?
Here.
Ms. Weger?
Here.
Mr. Loudermilk?
Here.
Mr. Thompson?
Here.
Mr. Morris?
Here. Okay. We have minutes of the preceding meeting. Are there any additions, corrections, or to that journal? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to accept.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor by aye? Aye. Opposed? Public comment now. This time, anybody from the public on any of these issues? We have quite a few on here tonight. Yes, very good. Thank you.
Good evening. Do you need my name and address and all?
Yes, please.
Liz Brown, 2129 North 11th Street, Terre Haute. I have a concern. I read an article in the Tribune-Star describing a recent incident for which Mr. Norm Loudermilk was disciplined, and it relates to the county in the sense that he's been hired into the position as head of the Vigo County Juvenile Justice Center. And so, given this public knowledge of Mr. Loudermilk's repeated past actions that resulted in official reprimands as a public safety officer, I'm just curious how it was he was hired. And so really this is somewhat for the Personnel Committee. So I have a series of questions, some specific questions, and I'll hand those out to you all. Here, why don't I send? So they relate to how hiring is done in the county. So the first group, is it common practice to post a position before the incumbent vacates it? I understand the previous director did not submit his written letter of resignation until January 6th, but the posting period for the position was December 20th to January 2nd. And many of these days were weekend or vacation days in that time period. And I'm just curious, is this the standard practice? And was the position supposed to be posted for a certain number of working days? And if so, how many? My second set of questions concern with HR. What was HR's involvement in the hiring? Was a background check conducted? Who conducted it? How was it done? How was the decision made? I understand that Mr. Loudermilk and Sheriff Plassey are personal friends. Would this be a reason for Sheriff Plassey to recuse himself in the hiring decision? What processes does the county have in place to ensure that cronyism and nepotism are minimized in the hiring process? I'm not suggesting necessarily that this was the wrong thing to do. I'm just curious about the process and was it followed? And then the third thing, what specific insurance coverages protect the council and the county taxpayers from potential lawsuits if any incidents occur in the Vigo County Juvenile Justice Center? So those are my questions. I think most of them would go to the Personnel Committee.
Well, first of all, the council sets pay scales for personnel, and we don't, other than our council administrator and our attorney, we do not hire or fire anyone.
Right. So who maintains the processes? Is this something I should talk with HR?
So the commissioners have a human resource department, and my understanding is that recently we just changed people at human resources, but we do have a replacement. And I can't speak to it, but I had been told that the position was posted and there were different applicants for that position. Now, my understanding is when the juvenile center was created many years ago, that was under the court's jurisdiction and that administrator was appointed by the judge. My understanding currently is that that authority was relinquished to the sheriff and that the sheriff made that hiring decision.
Okay. So I should speak with the sheriff? Is that the takeaway?
That's my understanding. I can be corrected on any of those points, but that's my understanding because I have followed up on it and several of us have talked about it on the council.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Brian Bennett, 220 Barton, Terre Haute. I hadn't planned to talk today, but this morning when I was having breakfast, I read an interesting article in the paper that I've been kind of thinking about all day, and thought I'd share my thoughts with you all. The article appeared in the New York Times about 2 weeks ago, and it was written by Yuval Levin. Now, if the name is not familiar to you, he is a director at the American Enterprise Institute and an editor at the National Review. So his credentials as a conservative political analyst are impeccable. The essence of his article was that people like him, political analysts, social critics, often describe the fabric of our country as starting to fray and unravel. And usually that's because the individual, we look at that unraveling as somehow a fault of the individual. Now his view is that we should look to institutions when we complain about this unraveling of our social fabric. So when we think of the courts, for example, the public expectation is that they will be just, that they will be fair. When the public thinks of government, they expect it to be honest. They expect it to be, or its members to be perspicacious. When we think of public safety, we expect those who work in that area to be honest and courageous. Now, for the reasons that Liz just mentioned, I wonder if, given the appearance of this recent hiring, if the public confidence in public safety is going to fray and suffer as a result. I don't think that we want that. Public safety needs our respect, our confidence. They need and we need for them to behave in a way that matches our expectations, to be courageous, to be honest, to be transparent, to be above board. And the appearance of this recent hiring does not reinforce those expectations. Now, I see that the sheriff is in attendance. Would it be a breach of protocol if he were to address the issue or the questions that were just raised?
Is the time?
So, John, it sounds like it's up to you.
Members of the council, John Plasty, Vigo County Sheriff. I don't think this is a council matter. I don't think it's appropriate to comment here at the council meeting for that. If you have concerns with what I've done, please see me about that. Thank you.
I'm sorry, before we have our next, may I ask a procedural question related to the matters that have been brought before us?
Yes, go ahead.
I was thinking about this today from a procedural perspective, and because I've been approached by people in the community asking questions on this topic, and you know, I often in a situation where there is getting to an answer. So in this case, I thought about if there were a situation in the organization that I'm a part of, apart from the council, where a hiring situation was questioned. And it seems like what would happen there, I would expect, would be that there would be a kind of an independent or sort of a third party involved discussion about what the procedure was, how the decisions were made, and sort of to have kind of that external or independent or separate review of what had happened. I guess with regard to the questions being asked in this matter, my procedural question is there some kind of process that we would have, starting with HR, presumably, that would follow such a path, to really just take a look at what had happened? Perhaps in such a review, for example, I can think of that, you know, you would look at when the posting was up, you would look at who the applicants were, you would look at what questions were asked of applicants, and, you know, consider by talking with the participants what the answers were, and kind of just sort of settle yourself that indeed the right things happened. I think I understand that we're not responsible as the council for the direct procedures involved, but I guess my question is there someone in the county who would be responsible for that external or independent or third party kind of review of the situation? Which, by the way, would be intended hopefully to help and settle matters in a way that would breed confidence.
I would think that several years ago, we struggled with some of these issues. And a human resources department was formed. And since then, I believe that we have been in very good compliance with all the basic guidelines that are required of any entity for hiring and drug testing and qualification files and posting, etc. And I would say that we could certainly ask questions of HR, but as I say, from one council person's view, I believe they've done a very good job of maintaining the requirements that have been set out, hiring practices and etc.
Thank you.
Any more public comment? I guess we should maybe taken that comment here on communication from elected officials. Go ahead here. Thank you.
So I'm Andre Kumro, 2129 North 11th Street. And I hate to open up an old sore, but the jail project has been the single most expensive project in the memory, and it's certainly been on the minds of the community, and it's taken up a significant amount of time of many people, including you and us and a lot of other people. And it's certainly been a contentious issue and has generated some really strong opinions. And to that end, I wanted to ask about the special jail planning committee that was formed in 2019. Who was part of that committee, what the committee accomplished last year, did it meet, how many times it met, and what the committee brought forth either to this council or to the public in general. And then to follow up, I'm just curious if the special committee has been formed again this year, and what they're planning on doing and when they're planning on meeting, if these meetings are public, and what they plan to address in terms of construction and programming, and what kind of impact that may have on the jail population, as that seems like it would be something that the special jail committee would have addressed. So I'm just curious if did the committee actually meet in 2019, and who was part of that committee?
Anyone on council speak to that? I mean, I think we had representation on that committee, didn't we?
It seems like it was a pretty important topic, this jail, and we seem to have gotten very little information out of that. I mean, it was my impression that it was Mr. Loudermilk and Mr. Thompson, and I thought it was you, Mr. Morris, who were part of that committee, but I don't know.
No, I was never part of that committee.
There was a special committee that was formed in 2019 that was the special jail committee.
There was a committee that was listed, but there were no meetings for the committee itself. Much of the discussion that occurred was between myself and the commissioners and the sheriff's department. Much of the planning for the construction and the programming for the jail was between the sheriff's department, the commissioner's office, and the consultants that they used.
So who was part of that committee? Do we know?
Which committee are you
There were
speaking of?
that special jail committee that was formed. There were 3 members on that committee.
You named them, yes.
It was the 3 of you. Okay. Has the committee?
My recollection, that's correct, yes.
And has the committee been formed again for this year? The same committee?
We haven't met.
It would have been formed at the beginning of the year when.
There's been no meetings, no.
Okay.
No meeting.
Okay. So bottom line is we had a special committee. It never met. It never generated anything. It never produced anything other than you speaking directly to the commissioners as a single individual.
It was an ad hoc committee created.
Yep.
And there was never any meetings, no.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any more public comment? This time, communications from elected officials or other officials, agency of the county.
Council President, let's speak briefly.
Mr. Loudermilk?
In light of some feedback that I've received and some conversations that I've had, one of the things I want to bring up to speak at the beginning of this meeting about is a consideration by the council as a whole to adjust our meeting times for the remainder of this year from 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock. The feedback I'm getting, there are a substantial number of people that would prefer the meetings be at 6. I know we've done that the last 2 years, in 2018 and 2019, and I would just ask the council give that consideration at this time. If you would prefer, maybe we could have discussion on the topic, and then if there is no discussion to be had, I would be willing to make a motion.
I would entertain a motion at this time.
So I'd make a motion for the remainder of the regularly scheduled meetings for the 2020 year to move from 5 p.m. start time to 6 p.m.
Second.
We have motion, a second. Mr. Auditor, roll call or vote.
If I may, real quick,
Yes,
I
comment?
just want to make sure that we are in appropriate setting to do this. This is within the 60-day range of changing the rules, so I get that. And this is okay to do it during this portion of the agenda? Thank you.
I would like to say a couple things too. I
Yes.
too am in agreement with Councilperson Loudermilk. Reached out to the United Way to learn that average travel time for working individuals in Vigo County is 18 minutes. That'd be hard for community members to get here after 5 o'clock. And if you have no transportation, it's over an hour. So thank you, Councilperson Loudermilk, for bringing that up.
Any more comment? Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Burnett,
Aye.
Mr. Schweitzer,
Aye.
Mr. Mann,
Aye.
Ms. Swiger,
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk,
Aye.
Mr. Thompson,
Aye.
Mr. Morris.
Aye. Okay. Motion pass. All right, I believe we have,
I'm sorry, Mr. Morris, if I may.
yes. Or commit, yep.
Thank you. Rob Roberts, Chief Deputy Prosecutor. I just wanted to maybe lay a little groundwork with a request that's going to be assigned to a committee tonight. I sent out an email to all of the members of the council approximately 2 weeks ago, indicating some requests from the prosecutor's office. I think the important thing that I just wanted to stress tonight was similar requests were made in 2019. Of course, I know there were a lot of different considerations regarding the criminal justice system, and a lot of additional monies were allocated during that time, none towards our office. And I would just ask that each of you take a look at the numbers of prosecutions that took place in 2000, or that were initiated in 2019 compared to the previous 5 to 10 years, depending on which set of numbers that you look at. And you'll notice there's been a dramatic increase in the number of cases filed. So at this point in time, I know there will be some committee hearings on this issue, and hopefully it will pass through committee and be heard by the full council at the next meeting. But I did want to make myself available in advance for any questions. So feel free to ask questions now, or if you would like to contact me or Mr. Modis at any point in time, we're certainly interested in having further communications about our requests.
We have the request to move forward to Personnel Committee. Reclassify a legal secretary, establish a additional position, deputy prosecutor, and an additional legal secretary. Is that correct?
And then also permission from the council to take one current spot, fulfill those roles with 2 existing deputies, trial deputies, and split the salary amongst those 2.
Okay. As I say, move forward to the Personnel Committee and go over it. If there's any comment or questions from council. They don't have all this information in front of them yet, Mr. Roberts.
That's okay. Thank you.
I would just ask that when we have the meeting, that we could have before us all the updated numbers for the increases in case filings that you've seen over the last several years, maybe some trending on those increases, so we can examine that.
Yeah, I'll try and bring that up to date just before any of the meetings to include any numbers from 2020 and make sure that they're still trending in that same direction.
Sure, great.
Absolutely.
Could we all also get some information on caseload per prosecutor? Those kinds of things?
I'm not sure what you mean by that. You mean just within our office? Okay, I can tell you what cases are filed in each particular court, that certainly.
I guess I'm talking about over time, how many cases and I don't mean that you're going to answer right now, right?
Sure.
But just to look at how that caseload has moved across the, last couple of years, if that's fair to ask.
I will do my best. I don't know that I have that information readily available, but I will see what I can put together. All right. Great.
Excellent.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay,
I've got,
Mr. Bramble?
yeah, you've been presented with a list of encumbrances for this year, and I'd like to include them in the record. We've got, we're encumbering $416,996.44 from the general fund. The other big encumbrance is $3,325,625.87 from the edit fund. And the total with all the other smaller funds for encumbrances for the county this year are $4,952,236.28.
Questions of the auditor?
Will budget adjustment be considering these in committee? As we did last year?
They just need to be read into the record. They've already been posted. We've scrubbed them and.
Last year, there was a fair amount of analysis that was done to confirm that these were backed up by contracts and/or invoices
That's been done,
by the auditor's office.
yes.
Has the council administrator had a chance to take a look at?
It's not the council or administrator's responsibility.
I found that very helpful last year.
$4.952236.28. Money not spent but encumbered for 2019, correct?
It's obligations that were incurred in 2019, but the payment not made until this year.
Okay. Council members, I'm sure you're welcome to go through any of these things and ask questions of.
And the details available
Yes.
in our office for review at your convenience.
Okay. Any other questions? Mr. Wright?
Just one moment, please.
Yes,
Mr.
Mayor,
President.
sorry.
So I'm waiting to make sure I'm understanding what we're doing here. By presenting them tonight, they are being accepted.
They're being made a matter of record.
Okay. And that will be available to anyone who wants them,
Right.
correct? As a matter of record. I'm just saying, anyone here, anybody in Vigo County, they can come, they can inquire.
As with any payment or expenditure we make.
Thank you.
I think we had some discussion last year about the need, and I think I had some conversation with one of the State Board of Accounts people at a June meeting, I think, about the fact that we should have a capital improvement plan to back up our edit funding. Have we produced that plan since last year to back up the $3.3 million that we have in edit funding to meet that state requirement?
A capital improvement plan would be, I think, a good idea. We do have, the engineering department has an improvement plan related to what highways and such, but I think it could be expanded to include the whole county. We did it right.
Correct. Larry Robbins, Vigo County Engineer. We do not have an official capital improvement plan. There are projects that have been in the hopper, especially since I've came on board, that are obligations through our MPO that we are trying to fund. There is a long-range transportation plan that is available through the MPO. But as far as a countywide capital improvement plan, there is not one. It is something I would like to get to. It's something I'd definitely like to do for our county. I think it shows where we're going. It gives us a clear picture of what obligations we're going to have in the future, not just 2-3 years out, but 10, 15 years out. And I think it'd be a good idea for us to plan for that amount of growth in the future.
May I talk to you a little bit about that? Not
Sure.
tonight, but okay,
Sure.
thank you.
Any more questions of the auditor? Yes.
The documentation that I found in their manuals and bulletin indicate that this could be made a matter. The council has already approved these expenditures through the appropriation process. And I'll get you the information that
I can tell you the other tax, all they are done is presented to the council as part of your representative.
We voted on it last year in approval, and I would not be, at minimum, I would not be comfortable with bringing it to a vote tonight, even though we have approved all these expenses. I believe there was 3 or 4 of us that spent quite a bit of time going over these encumbrances last year at some depth. It was a time consuming, but it was good. It was a good function. We'd forgot what we'd spent the money for. No. But I would not. So we'll decide whether we're going to bring it up for a vote or not then at the next meeting. Okay. Next, Mr. Wright, I believe.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. President, members of the council. On Friday of last week, I received an email from a lawyer in Chicago indicating that Wabash Valley Resources, the proposed retrofitter of the Duke Energy plant for potential ammonia production, has identified unused volume cap with the Indiana Finance Authority from the calendar year 2019 that they would like the IRS to recognize as carry forward for a potential bond issuance on that project. I believe the number in the IRS form is in the neighborhood of $39 million of unused bonding capacity. And essentially what the council would be acknowledging is that if there is a potential project in the future, that unused volume cap could be used in 2022 or 2023 when a project is actually viable. And in order for that to happen, the IRS has to have notification from the potential obligor on the bond payment. Although the county would not be responsible for the debt, it would be the one in theory issuing the debt. The IRS has to have notice that you requested back at the time that we want this earmarked for potential future use. So Mr. Morris has seen a IRS Form 8038 related to that, and I'm happy to answer any questions about the process.
I think I don't know whether any of the council members were on council at the time, but this has to do with the coal gasification conversion of that plant on the Duke Energy side, the old Wabash Energy generating site, and converting that into anhydrous ammonia generating fertilizer plant.
That's correct.
And it's kind of it's a little out of our normal type of things to do, financing, et cetera. So questions to Mr. Wright, please, if you have them.
I would just say that the conversations that I've had with Steve Witt, they are here now. They have a payroll going now. Working with Duke Energy and closing their facility and making sure they understand how things work. But the scale of that project is, I know the council was different in 2016, but it's a several $100 million potential investment. And the thing that makes it more viable from an economic development perspective is there's all that infrastructure there already. So much of the, what would normally be a potential $1 billion project can be scaled back because there's all of Duke Energy's former operation still there and capable of functioning. So it's, something that is very long-term, but it is worth doing this at this point to make it more viable if it ever should come about. So
we have to, yeah.
I'll ask. Normal procedure is we have the creation of a document, a request, it goes to the president signs it. Is this what we're not being asked to do that?
No.
So we're getting this tonight, first time. Information's good.
Yeah. No, I understand that's the normal process. And Calissa talked to her yesterday as well. This is something that has to be to the IRS by, I believe, February 18th. Well, I know it's a day extended beyond that because of the holiday, is what I talked to her today. But the information was brought to you, so you were at minimum aware of it.
So this is not something that needs approval.
No.
This is just
an FYI.
It's being out, public setting.
That's right.
Some information.
That there's a IRS form with the county council's acknowledgement that these potential volume cap unused bond dollars could potentially be used here in the future because they were not used in the calendar year 2019. Only that you're aware of it. It's not any obligation of the county or any dollars, anything like that. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Council President Morris?
Yes.
Sorry, I have a question.
Yes.
Sorry. There have been some changes in the convention center project.
Yeah.
In which, of course, we have a financial commitment. Would we be interested, I guess I'm asking the council, in an update, or will we be asking for an update on that as the discussion goes forward in the city council about the changes to the footprint and how that project is constituted?
Well, my understanding is we're supposed to get a financial report on a regular basis, and I think I've seen 2 of them since we've been on here. So I guess we could quit funding them, and then they might get a financial statement to us.
Okay, maybe you and I mean, is that something that might we just ask for them to come to the
We've
next?
asked. I think that's only prudent.
Okay.
Yeah.
To see CIBB in the morning, you know that.
CIB in the morning? Yeah.
9 o'clock.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm not available at 9 o'clock on many days, so.
I'll be there.
CID meeting is a week.
Well, I mean,
Week from tomorrow? Okay. well,
Wait
I'll
for
be there.
tomorrow.
I'll go.
the county has, what, I believe we approved, was it $10 million of funding to go to that project? And there has been a significant change. It seems like it might be in order for them to come and talk to us about that.
Well, just as an update, the project is very much in a negotiation standpoint. I mean, there is some belief that the garage associated with the Hilton Garden and the potential new hotel, that the construction estimate was well below what the bid came in at, that if there were a way to get away from having to build that more expensive structure and still providing the parking solution that the Hilton Garden and downtown needs in general, with the potential acquisition of the school corporation property, it is something that at this point is not even worth having the solid discussion, because you don't know that it's going to actually come about. But there is active negotiation with the school corporation that, in my understanding, is fluid.
I guess maybe I'm not making any sense here, but, if I paid a lot of money for something that now seems to be perhaps less or significantly different, it seems like I want to know about that. And who I would want to know that from would be the people that are most involved in those decisions, who can come and describe and help me understand what is going on, so I know that my commitment is still a good commitment, and I can explain that to people that might ask me about that project. So I don't know if this might be something that perhaps I can contact you about and talk further with you about, Council President Morris, to see if that might be a good use of our time.
Well, I would just say that, the CIB is, as I said, meeting a week from tomorrow at 9 a.m. in this room, and I am reasonably certain that this will be a significant topic of discussion at that meeting. So.
Yeah, thank you.
9 a.m. on Tuesday.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Sheriff Plasty.
President Morris, members of council, John Plass, Vigo County Sheriff. I just want to make you aware that there is a grant available. It's a Cops Ahead grant, and it pays 75% of salary for a new deputy. There's no guarantee that we would get that, but I wanted to at least make you aware, because you would have to approve money to fund it. It's not 100% funded. They fund 75%. We were looking at applying for up to 7 deputies. It's for a 3-year period, and after that 3 years, you do not have to keep them on. You could let that expire, and there's no requirement of the county. The amount per deputy would be $18,750 a year, or $131,251 if they did approve 7. Now, there's no guarantee they would approve 7. They may approve a lesser amount. They may approve nothing. In my experience with doing this with the city police, I approved for 1 grant, and I applied for 1 grant that was approved, and 2 subsequent grants were not given out to us based on the whole state and how they allocate that. So I guess my reason here today is to let you know that we want to apply for that, but I don't want to do that if it's going to meet resistance, or you wouldn't support funding at least at 25% if we were approved of that grant. And I can send you more information. The grant is due March 11th. You meet again on March the 10th. But I can send you more information on that if you want, or I can answer any questions you have now on it.
Any questions of council to the sheriff?
But in the meantime, I'll send you more information before the next meeting, so you'll have that. All right.
One question, Sheriff.
Yes.
Would you be able to have that ready to roll if we okayed that? I mean, would you?
We
be able
could
to
submit
get
it that
the-
night after the council meeting, so it wouldn't be like the last day.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, just a second. Ask my question here. Normal procedure is it's submitted, it's signed to the president, to a committee, the committee brings it to the council. There would have to be a suspension of rules?
What'd you say on date?
I don't know when they would
March
make
11th?
March 11th is when it's due. When they would actually award those grants would be later in the year. I don't have an actual date for that. And it wouldn't be until calendar year 2021.
And I understand that, but if you're asking for the council to commit the dollars,
Correct.
that normally goes through a budget procedure, not done by a vote of suspending the rules for A, the hiring of individuals, and then even B, funding at a 25% rate. So is it a necessary component of the grant that it's already pre-approved?
No, sir. I just want to make you aware.
Thank you.
Okay. And I could do that route because if it were, personnel committee stuff is due in March, correct? So I know we wouldn't know by then if we got approved by then.
It'd be assigned this meeting for March meeting.
I guess we could do the 7 and then bring it to you and then you can act however you want on that. We could go forward that way. But it's an unknown because I don't know if it would get granted or approved or not, so.
Well, I think, Sheriff, I think that you know the normal questions are going to be asked. What, is it, you just want 7 more officers because we get a grant, or do you want 7 more officers because we have this many more arrests? Do you have, the need and that kind of thing? So I guess.
I've got that. I can either go through it now with you or I can wait and send it to you individually, however you'd like.
What's your pleasure, council? You want to go through it now, or you want to go get it sent to us?
Send it.
Send it to us, I think.
Okay.
Sheriff,
Will do.
thank you. Thank you for your interest. Okay. Mr. Thompson.
I passed out the updated guidelines for the Nixle policy. I believe we talked about this last March, maybe. I think there might have been some issues with the guidelines at that time, quite sure. Didn't have all the information then that we have now. And I believe this has been put in the budget for this year. The system costs $500 for us to have up to 5 keywords or groups. And I guess a keyword or a group would be if the health department had their own Nixle keyword, or Parks and Recreation, Highway Department, whatever we wanted them to have. So the new guidelines, pretty much, if we added a couple things in there, you can take a look at that, see what you think. This does not override the current county policy we have for social media. But I don't know, does the council have any questions on the Nixle system? So is there anything you can add, Lisa?
I did have a conversation with the director of the 911 and also the service provider. There is an open account that's not being utilized that we could probably take over one, and we would not have the cost of doing another account, or not unless you wanted 10 keywords. If it grew enough or you used it, you may want to consider it. But right now you can have it at no cost.
How many keywords does that one provide? Is it the same thing?
Same
Do you still
thing,
have?
it's 5.
So we can get this for no cost, just work off the 911?
No cost to county general fund. Because they're already paying for it out of 911.
So I don't know how to move forward on this now. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Mr. Mann, do you remember the details of the allocation? We allocated some money for the Nixle system, $500 or something like that.
If I had had knowledge of this, I would have been happy to look this up. The discussion that I recall is we want to make sure that we have to make the determination as to who gets access to it.
Mm-hmm.
So how is it going to be determined? And you're saying 5, right?
500, yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
Yes.
So how are we determining the 5 that are going to receive it?
The 5 keywords or?
Just who is able to send information out? I'm assuming this is for going out,
Yes.
correct?
With departments.
So, yeah, so who gets that flow? And when we were asked, if I remember correctly, the funding part was to put it in place, but we weren't going to be the decision makers on who was having the output. We were just being asked to fund it. Is that correct?
No,
That's why I ask you.
One of the.
I don't remember for sure.
One of the accounts for the keywords would be for the council, so that or if you just want to do a general government, so if you wanted to send out a notification for meetings, or, just announcements. At one point, I think when we talked about that, it was during a lot of the jail process, and it was because there would be additional jail meetings or public forums, so that you could send out announcements for that. You can also include links if you want to announce something and provide a link to the website that has more detailed information.
So who is going to have ownership of establishing the kind of thing that we're talking about here? The 5 use of definition of which 5 words or accounts we're going to have, what the standard is for communicating information, how the public will be notified that this exists and they can sign up for things of interest. Who has that responsibility as we do this?
That really, at this point, lies on the council and the people that have the keywords. So if you gave a keyword to like the commissioners had a keyword, like Commissioner Kearns would possibly send out a notification to a lot of people he knows or put it on Facebook to generate people, to sign up, give them an opportunity to sign up because they have to subscribe to the service.
Right. I'm just hoping that if we're going to say we're going to, I guess the question is, are we going to do this? If we are, can we establish that we'll have a little, dare I say it, meeting to figure those things out, reach out to some other departments, find out who's interested, set up a little bit of a process, make an announcement. It wouldn't be very hard.
Ms. Wager, Mr. Mann, Mr. Schweitzer, would you be comfortable with giving this to the Personnel Committee and ask some of these questions and bounce back and forth and bring it to the general March meeting?
Absolutely.
Or would you like to participate in it?
I'm comfortable with it being assigned to the committee. I'm just going to ask my same question again. We generally are not the ones who make the decisions, just like what was brought up earlier today. We are asked to fund the position.
Right.
And so what process is there to be followed if the council is going to start being the implementer of these particular items as they come before us? And so is there a procedure? Is there something to follow? Generally, we are asked to fund it. And then it gets executed by the executors, which is the county commissioners, in my understanding of local government.
So
I agree with Jim. I think this is a commissioner issue, not a council issue. Brendan, would you like to speak on that?
Would I like to? I will. So I'm in dialogue, Brendan Kearns, County Commissioner, District 1. I'm in dialogue right now with our 911 Director, Vicki Oster. We've been working on Nixle, ways to improve it, ways to make it more effective. Right now, our Nixle account covers county dispatch, city dispatch, and I put a question mark and she replied yes. So I'm not sure what that third one is. But we do have an open spot, an open license. In order for us to activate that, it does cost us $1,000 to do that. So it went up from when you mentioned it to when I texted her. So I regret texting her now. But it's $1,000 for that. What we can do is look at, if you're wanting to do just a basic notification system for meetings, events, whatever, we'll go ahead and set one of those accounts up if we can do it as a combined initiative. Calista could have access to it, Tammy could have access to it, and we would just send the info out as needed. Is that kind of what you guys are thinking? What you're wanting to do? I'm not exactly sure what you want to do.
Yeah, it was initially, when we talked about it last year, it was about each individual department, or not each, but some, being able to send out, like the health department, if she's going to have a clinic somewhere.
So if we just
Or
do
her
a
to be
county
able to have
news,
control over it to send it out.
a county department news nixle, would that work? Because you're $1,000 per department, the way it looks.
That's not the way they told me.
Well, yeah, I'm just going,
When did we have our conference? A month ago?
Maybe.
It was $500 at that time, right?
And you get 5 keywords.
so we've got a 911 meeting tomorrow. I may be able to work something out, because we have 5 different law enforcement agencies on our Nixle system. One of them is Sealyville. But the thing is, when you subscribe to Nixle, you've got those categories that you can choose from. If you want Sealyville only, then you would click on that. So I'd say if you do the committee, I can have something prepared by your committee meeting as far as options goes. And what I'll try to do is find a no-cost solution. If you want a county council specific one, we'll see what that cost would be.
As late as
And
today.
just to let you guys know, I don't think we can hear either you, Calissa, or Bob when you guys are talking. They want to hear you. It's very important, especially Bob. Right, everybody? Okay, got thumbs up. I think those were thumbs. Yeah.
As late as today, I received an email from Mr. Gonzalez, that's with Nixle, that there was an account open with 911, and that we could have it, that I said I should discuss it with Vicky, and Vicky had also told me that it was available and that we could have it at no cost.
Okay, and she said that, and then she followed up with saying it's $1,000. So I need to have a conversation with her, and I can definitely do that tomorrow during the 911 meeting.
Okay.
But yeah, it's something that it does run through the commissioner's office. 911 runs it, but we can make something work for sure. Because we were wanting to do it. Bob James, are you still here? There he is. We were going to do it for road closures.
And I believe that one's already set up.
But it was set up as a test account. We never launched it.
Well, yeah, but it was set up.
But if it's set up and there is a test account, then the person you talk to sees that as being used.
Mm-hmm.
And what we could probably do is just morph all this into one account and not have an extra expense. That's why I'd rather just look at what we do have set up and then communicate that with you guys and figure out how to move forward. Thumbs up?
All right.
Sound good? And then we can market it. Get the word out. Because I know a lot of people are going to be really excited to know that they can get notifications from the commissioners and the county council. This is going to be a big deal for them. Okay. Anything else?
Nothing else from public officials. Move on to reports from standing committees. Reports from select committees. Okay, ordinance relating to appropriations. Annual Budget Committee. Mr. Mann, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. I believe we have 3 items before us. The first one is Resolution 2020-01, 10-year real property tax abatement for Industrial Maintenance Engineering Incorporated, DBA AIS Gauging. It's request of Council 20-8. I believe we do have representation here. The information starts on page 5, and it is found again on page 32. I would recommend, before we hear from Mr. Llewellyn, on page 35 where it says resolution number, I would go ahead and make that 2020-01 so that you would have the document that was presented before us. So it's 2020-01 in the resolution number, which is right below the email address. And I do want to note, and I thank you for doing this, and this is why we have committee meetings, is to get questions answered. The additional number of employees is at 18, which means the number of employees that would be made available is 26.
Correct.
And so I thank you. The committee meeting was extremely valuable. So go ahead and talk about the project, Mr. Llewellyn. This passed committee 3-0 with a favorable vote.
Thank you, Mr. Mann. Mr. President, other council members, my name is Jeff Llewellyn. I'm an attorney with the Wilkinson Law Firm here in Terre Haute, appearing this evening on behalf of Industrial Maintenance Engineering, Inc., who does business locally as AIS Gauging. We have previously filed our petition for the 10-year real property tax abatement request prior to the January meeting. I appeared at that meeting and spelled out this project, I think, in pretty significant detail at that time. Also with me at that meeting was the principal and president of the company, Mr. John Young, who as well gave you some additional information. We have filed our Form SB1 as required, again, detailing the project as far as real property, where it is located, the improvements, the current assessed value, the estimated improvement value. We did indicate initially in our petition that the proposed estimated cost would be $500,000, but Mr. Young indicated at our January meeting he believed that, having received some bids now, would move toward $750,000 investment. As Mr. Mann pointed out, there will be 18 new jobs, full-time jobs created by this project. There are currently 8 full-time jobs in operation, which would be retained, so a total of 26 employees for AIS would be in place within the new facility in Vigo County. And we did spell out in detail what those jobs were and estimated salary ranges with benefits to all of that. We published notice as required for this meeting and or the adoption of resolution number 1. We're here tonight seeking your adoption and final action for a confirmatory resolution confirming resolution number 1, approving a 10-year real property tax abatement. I certainly would be glad to answer any questions that you have or give you more details, but I believe between the first meeting and, as Mr. Mann had pointed out, the committee meeting, we have provided all of the details for this project that you were looking for. So we would respectfully request a favorable vote this evening.
Any questions to Mr. Llewellyn?
Just to reiterate some of the information you've referred to tonight that we talked about in January.
Yes.
My recollection is that a number of those positions that will be the new positions are in the $60,000 and above, some in the $80,000 and $90,000 range. So quite good positions in this county.
That is accurate. And in some sales positions estimated at a $100,000 range as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I would entertain a motion.
I move that we, a favorable vote on this abatement.
I'll second.
We have a motion, Ms. Wager, and second, Ms. Burnett. Are there any other questions? Roll call vote, Mr. Auditor, please.
Ms. Burnett,
Aye.
Mr. Schweitzer,
Aye.
Mr. Mann,
Aye.
Ms. Wager,
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk.
Aye.
Mr. Thompson.
Aye.
Mr. Morris.
Aye. Pat, let the record show passed unanimously. Thank you. And we all wish you great success.
Thank you all very much.
Mr. Mann.
Mr. President, second item up is Resolution 2020-02, reestablishment of a cumulative fund. Request to Council 20-005 for Sugar Creek Fire Protection District. We do have representation here. This is found on page 8 and then also on 3738. So it's on 37 and 38 in our books for tonight. Welcome. This passed favorably, 3-0.
Thank you. Carol Holbert, Secretary Treasurer, Sugar Creek Fire Protection District, just coming back before the council this year to take our cumulative equipment fund to the maximum levy rate. Just went to Budget Committee, and as Mr. Mann said, that was favorable, and just looking for full council to also approve so we can let this lay out for 30-day remonstrance period. And if no objections, we'll file with DLGF and take our cumulative equipment fund to the established rate of .033.
Any questions?
And if I may here, make sure I get it clear, this is for next year.
2021.
Yes, so it will not be applicable in 2020.
Yes. DLGF has to have it by April 30th, so we have to get all the paperwork done early and get it there in time for them to approve, and then it will not come into effect till next year.
There's no other questions. I'd entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Ms. Weger and Mr. Schweitzer. I think all in favor of this by aye. Aye. Opposed? Just show the record that it passed unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. President, the third item for us is Resolution 2020-03, reestablishment of the cumulative fund, request to Council 20-006, New Goshen Fire Protection District. This also passed the committee favorably 3-0. It's a similar request to the previous one.
Also representing New Goshen, they're going to do the same thing, take their cumulative equipment fund to the max rate effective for the 2021 year.
Questions? Would entertain a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Loudermilk, second by Ms. Weger. All those in favor by aye? Aye. Opposed? None?
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Council President, Mr. Morris.
Yes.
Would you make a record of the vote on that?
Let the record record that it was unanimous approval.
Should we also list the resolution numbers or the ROC numbers for the minutes instead of just saying motion to approve, or is that okay for the minute purposes?
It's on the agenda. I mean, I think that clerk can take
We
it
know
from
what
the
you're talking
agenda.
about.
Yeah.
Resolution number, motion, so I think it's on.
I can announce them. Okay, moving on. Budget Adjustment Committee.
Additional appropriation ordinance 2020-01, local health department trust fund. Looks like 2019, the county council approved a part-time raise for employees of $2 an hour. Asking for an additional appropriation of $1,752 for salary and $84 for Social Security. Motion passed in council favorably 3-0.
Representative Health Department is here. Any questions? No questions from council? Do you have any comments?
No, I don't, for once.
How are things at the Health Department?
Good. We did a flu shot clinic for the homeless population at a Lighthouse Mission today, and that's always very rewarding. And gearing up in case the coronavirus would become something that is a public health threat, more so than what it is in the U.S. and Indiana and in Vigo County.
Okay. Would entertain a motion for additional appropriation.
Hold on.
What? Yes?
How many shots were given today?
I'm not for sure. They have about 75 residents, and so we brought 60 vaccine just in case some of the staff wanted them also. That's a population that we've gone in and did the hepatitis A vaccine for because we still have the multi-state Hep A vaccine. We also go into the county jail, going into the soup kitchens, but those are those things that it's kind of good to know the numbers and have them assessed for situations like Hep A or doing the flu shots, but I can get that information for you.
Sure.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yes.
Always good to hear from the different departments.
See all the good things that's going on, and remember, you still have an open invite. If you ever want to come shadow or come visit our compound, which is where our vehicles are kept and all of our mosquito spraying equipment, I think you'd be quite impressed. No, I know you would be.
I can vouch for that.
Have you been there, Jim?
I
Isn't
went.
it amazing?
And it's clean, it was
Yes.
efficient, it was everything you would expect county government to be. And
Absolutely.
it's a very good product.
Thank
Very,
you.
very good service.
Thanks.
Okay. Well, I would entertain a motion at this time for additional appropriation ordinance 2020-01.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Loudermilk, seconded by Ms. Wager. All those in favor by aye. Aye. Opposed? Let the record show that the motion passed unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Additional appropriation ordinance 2020-02, Park and Recreation Fund.
I believe we have representation from Vigo County Parks Department. Excellent.
This was involving land acquisition funded in 2019.
Adam Grossman, Superintendent, Vigo County Parks. Here to answer any questions.
This was an appropriation that died. It was not encumbered for 2020, correct?
Correct. Land acquisition is a kind of a fickle thing, and it was appropriated late last year. We didn't have the opportunity to get on what we needed to. We've got several opportunities that are currently in the works right now, but without these funds, it won't be possible. Hence the reappropriation request. We've got more than that 154,351 that's necessary in Bicentennial Park, but that'll give us a good start. So confident that we can get that spent. But I believe it was October, without looking at my notes, before that was actually appropriated, between October and January to get that stuff done. And land acquisition was very difficult. So, but we've got a new start on this year, and confident that we can get that done.
Questions? Yes, Mr.
Just
Mann.
to make sure everyone's clear, Bicentennial Park is located west of the Dresser and Dreiser bridges.
Yeah. Yep.
Correct?
Yep.
This is near land that has already been purchased by the county.
Yes, sir.
So are these lots adjacent to? Are we expanding? Are we filling in? Where exactly are these proposed lots?
Yeah, actually, there's a lot of proposed area that's in our focused area. It's next to 40, along the river. The connector trail will be coming in, connecting West Terre Haute and Terre Haute, and making sure that we have our focus area established and making sure that we extend the RTP grant trail that we're going to extend into the wetland area there and then connect back to the river and then be able to establish that park and that trail system there.
Thank you.
Any other question, Mr. Grossman? question?
This passed committee favorably 3-0.
How many parcels is it?
There's several parcels, more than the 154, 351. Like I said, I think when I did the rough numbers, we could easily spend almost $300,000 on just land acquisition. Of willing sellers, I will add.
How close are you to getting all of it now?
It's going to be a long process. You know, we're going to try to stay in our focus area and try to get that
Your
river.
focus area, how close are you to getting your focus area?
We're getting pretty close to being able to act on a focus area. You know, money is a large hurdle first, and then but everything's starting to fall in place there. Where within a focus area along the river and along 40, you know, the focus area is becoming a reality. The park as a whole, you know, it'll be in phases, and those phases will be to come. It's not going to be tomorrow, but you know, it'll be a few years down the road. But the focus area along the river, up towards 40 and towards the wetland, is becoming a reality.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I would entertain a motion for a additional appropriation 2022 ROC 20-002 Park and Recreation Fund.
So moved.
There's a motion by Ms. Weger and seconded by Ms. Bennett to approve. All those in favor by aye? Aye. Opposed? Let the record show that the motion passed for unanimously.
Thank
Okay.
you. I appreciate it.
Thank you for the job the Parks Department does. Okay, moving on, Personnel Committee. Councilman Loudermilk.
Yes, Mr. President. First up, we have two rather lengthy requests, I guess, from two different departments. The first one is from the Sheriff's Department, amending 2020 salary ordinance for merit officers. It's a three-piece request. The first one's ROC number 2020-03, and it is a request to change and reclassify the major administrative position. Also, we have ROC 2020-04, and would be an amendment in the salary schedule for the Sheriff's Department under paragraph J regarding sick days and how they're awarded to those upon retirement. And the third piece is ROC 2020-04 again, paragraph D, section 7, same document, regarding comp time. This was heard by committee, and all three items passed 3-0 favorable. Sheriff Plassey?
Members of council, John Plassey, Vigo County Sheriff. Be happy to answer any questions or go over any of these in summary or in detail, however you'd like.
Mr. President,
Yes, Mr.
are we looking at these individually, or are we looking at
We
them?
will vote
aggregate?
on them individually.
So are we asking questions individually?
As presented as a group, just ask questions on any of the items. If we
Okay.
have when we get a motion on it, we can have additional questions. Get a motion and a second on them, we always ask for additional questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. I do not have any questions on A.
Okay.
On B, I'm trying to wrap my head around this. Define the problem. What's the difficulty here? And then I'll ask my vocabulary question.
Okay.
But what's the problem?
Currently, the way the sheriff's office is structured, a member can retire after 10 years. The language in the ordinance says they can receive half of their accumulated the unused sick days upon retirement after 20. So someone that retires at 10 years would not get that benefit when they leave.
Okay. You're vested after 10 years.
Yes, sir.
You receive, make sure I use the vocabulary right, you receive your sheriff's pension at an age equivalent and work of 52,
Correct.
right?
Yes.
And the 20 years, so if someone's getting the vested amount and it's retirement, they're generally going to work to get to that 20 years.
Correct.
So I'm still trying to grasp this here. A person that retires after 10 years is just receiving the vested a dollar amount.
Correct.
Then this would just mean they would be eligible for the retirement that previously had gone when you got to the rule of 52 with the 20 years.
All this does is just let them get paid for their sick time if they retire at 10, just because currently they do not. So it doesn't change any other things with the retirement after 10 years or 20.
Merit officers?
Yes, sir. 39.
39. So do most people get to the 20?
Yes. I can't
So
think
this would not impact very many individuals in the aggregate.
Correct. I did, at the committee, I was asked to bring some numbers for that. So if somebody was maxed out and they had 720 hours of sick time, the payout would be 8,280 if they were maxed out. And to further answer your question, there aren't many that leave after 10. Most states hold 20. But the wage negotiation committee brought this to me and asked if I would bring this to council in case someone would leave after 10 and not get that benefit.
So the word retirement, once again, just making sure with vocabulary.
Yes.
Retirement can be used in two different scenarios. It's not just 52, 20 years. It can be after 10 years.
Correct.
And they are considered retired. They just don't receive.
Until they're 52. Yes.
Thank
and they
you.
could retire any number after that, 10, 11, 12, whichever, as well, just for clarity.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the amount that they would receive if they max out?
If they had 720 hours, if they were paid at half of that, it's 8,280.
8,000.
If they were maxed out, yes.
And I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I got you. Nope. You're good.
And this is sort of removing at least one incentive to stay at 20 years. You don't
Yes.
perceive that that's going to be a problem, keeping the merit officers, the merit deputies?
You know, I've had limited experience with the sheriff's office, as you know. But in talking with the other deputies there, it's very rare someone leaves after 10. It's usually 20. But I think they just wanted to afford that benefit to someone that would leave at 10 that wouldn't get it unless they stayed to 20, as the language shows.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are we asking questions about all three? Did we
Yes.
say that?
Yes.
With the item A, the chief of operations,
Yes.
I recall that you are going to have the person in that position to manage or supervise a number of departments.
Correct.
What does it mean? What kind of benefits do you expect from basically collecting those departments with under that person?
In the past, everything that the sheriff's office encompasses, whether it's the jail, the court security, the building security, the juvenile center, road deputies, that all fell under the chief deputy. And what I did last year, January 1st, is restructured that and have the chief deputy over a certain portion of that and the chief of operations over the other part of that, to kind of divide their responsibilities so it's not all on one person and they could be overwhelming in that regard. The major position in the past did not have nearly this much responsibility. It was basically an IT person and some policy kind of things that he did. So there was a significant amount of responsibility added to this position. And that's why I wanted to bring that up to the chief of operations spot and also raise that salary to pay for that additional responsibility that's with it.
And then finally, this one is on the third request. And maybe I'm misremembering, but seems like when we talked about the change to the way that the overtime would be bucketed, I thought that when we talked about that, there was a question about the need for that and why that request was being made. And my recollection was that that had also been brought as a request to you as a change. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yes, yeah, both of these were brought to me by the wage negotiation committee within the sheriff's office. And the reason behind allowing them, at the end of the year now, they're allowed to max out at 40 hours is all that they can carry. That's paid down monthly. At the end of the year, those 40 hours are paid down to zero. So the deputy will start first of the year with zero overtime on the books. The request was to at least keep 40 on there, which would allow them to go to 80. And starting out the year, some people would keep that time and take that time off. And we see it as a way to save actually the county money because they wouldn't be getting paid that 40 hours. If they would take a day off, we don't have like a minimum staffing where we have to pay someone overtime to work for them. We have reserve deputies that cover that. Or sometimes shift will allow us to have that person off for vacation, holidays, whichever.
Okay, you just answered one of my questions, which was, is that going to drive up overtime for other people to cover those hours? And it's not, okay. And then I recall from the committee meeting that you had sort of made a comparison, I think, to, maybe I had asked a question about do other sheriff's departments do this? And I believe the comparison was to the local police department in a program there. Am I remembering that correctly?
They're allowed to carry 250 hours.
Okay.
And they're not paid down to zero at the end of the year.
Okay. Do you have trouble hiring sheriff's deputies?
We don't have a lot knocking on the door to apply. No, we're currently taking applications now.
Okay.
So we'll kind of see how this year goes.
Okay.
I know with last year through the process, we ended up with only 4 applicants left in the pool once we were done. So it's not a lot to choose from.
Do you have a kind of a average time that a position stays open before you can hire another deputy?
We try to get that immediately just because we don't have a lot of staff. So when we have one person short, which currently we have one retiring in April, and he's a detective, so we've already moved that person taking his spot to train in that spot. So when he leaves, she can take over and know what she's doing. So we're leaving actually the evening or the midnight shift with one person less because we don't have someone. Number one, we don't have a slot to hire yet, but we're working without that now just to get her trained up so she's good. So we don't like to leave those open more than we have to, and that's why we like to keep a current list. So if we do have an opening, we could hire someone for that.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions?
I have one for you, Mr. Loudermilk, if you will.
Sure.
Direct us where we're looking for these three. Am I hearing you correctly? With Part C, the belief is it's actually going to save the taxpayers' money?
Guys typically like more time off than to get paid for it, in my experience, and you may want to talk to the other two here if you like, but to have those days, especially when you don't have a lot of days to take off, those extra days to take off is beneficial.
Thank you. Are we just looking at changes in the documentation? We're not looking at any changes to budgets or anything along that line? We're only being asked to change the guidelines?
Well, you're looking at the document that starts on page 15.
Yes.
Correct? And Exhibit 1 that starts on page 18. So those are offered as the guideline of what the sheriff has presented. Okay? On page 16, section F, where it talks about the merit deputy classifications here.
Right.
The proposed amendment is to move from major to chief of operations. Currently, as was stated, the major receives a $6,500 stipend, and the request is to increase that $3,500 to a total of $10,000. So, and then also with that would be a proposed reduction in available lieutenants from 6 to 5. Okay? And as it was discussed earlier about the sick days, we have to move on that also, and then the carryover for the overtime at the end of the year, the following year.
And so page 17, which, as I'm reading it here, encompasses Exhibit 1, and this council is being asked to change the vocabulary, the wording of points 7 and 9 in Exhibit 1.
Mr. Mann,
Yes.
there's been some study done, and I believe that to achieve what the sheriff's trying to achieve, that a way to do that within our guidelines of our WIS, Wagner, Irwin, Shealy, that this position as chief of operations could be considered as special operations. And there's some guidelines within there that we could accommodate this request. And it would seem to me that it might be a cleaner type of situation. My understanding is this is a it needs to be clear, because this is reorganizational. This is what the sheriff wants to do, to reorganize his department. But I believe that we could, instead of dealing with the stipends and the merit poll and what have you, we could put this chief of operations in as special operations.
If you look at the documentation we received back from Wagner, Irwin, and Shealy, it's a 2-page memo, and the second page at the top offers their recommendation. Much of that recommendation is what President Morris has just discussed, is to create to view it as a special occupation position. But another thing we need to consider and look at is the FLSA status as well.
I thank you for all that information. I'm just wanting, I'm seeing dollar changes, and generally the documents that we have before us reflect the dollar changes. We don't always see the narrative that I'm seeing here today, and I'm hearing the dollar numbers are going to change, and so less money isn't going to be a consideration, but more money will be.
It's not additional money, it's just transferring money we already have for lieutenant spot to this chief of operations spot. and then eliminating that lieutenant spot, so.
which I get in the narrative here. But before tonight, we just had the one place to sign for all three. There weren't three separate ordinances, whatever I want to use for the vocabulary. Now, tonight, we've been given this one, which covers A. Am I correct in that? But this deals with Part A, which would leave what we're to approve tonight for B and C being on page 17. From what I'm seeing in the book. 19 and 20 and 18 are part of Exhibit 1, which goes with the narrative that Sheriff Classy has provided with us. So I'll let's ask my question. We're being asked to approve a salary ordinance change. And the salary ordinance change doesn't require any other, nothing. So we're not going to come back in a month and have to make any, this is just straight up vote on the narrative, but we may use this document for A. Is that fair?
Yes. Yes, the elimination of the lieutenant's position, going from 6 to 5, provides the coverage. Correct?
Yes, sir.
But there doesn't need to be any documentation on that position being eliminated. Okay, so Mr. President, this
ordinance? It's not on our schedule here. Yeah. Well, I take the stipend thing always has bothered me over the years, and like I say, that's when we're asked on the salary ordinance to change the job classifications. It's just one council person thinking that it would be cleaner to make it a special occupation and have a different salary ordinance, basically. I just don't like the way this one's worded, but we can vote on this. It went through the committee 3-0 favorable, and it accomplishes what the sheriff wants to do as well. But like I say, that's just one council person's opinion.
Council President Moore's salary ordinance 2020-01 is located nowhere on the agenda.
No.
So,
would you prefer to table this?
No.
And it was left off of our schedule, agenda.
Mr. President, if I may,
Yes,
was
sir.
it assigned as salary ordinance 2020-01? Is that how it was assigned to the committee?
All three things are signed under one.
It's all in there under one.
Okay. And if I may, Mr. President, if 2020-01 was assigned to the committee has made a recommendation for it to be favorable, and it's got an increase in the merit poll E, are there additional responsibilities for the chief of operations today that were not in place previously in terms of dollar amounts?
Yes, sir.
So they have additional responsibilities?
Yes.
Okay. So, Mr. President, are you looking for a recommendation to move on all three together, or are you looking to take them separately?
How's this worded, Jim? All three are on the same ordinance?
That's one.
That's just one.
For the wording, yes.
That's what I was trying to get at. One's for the wording of the position, and one is for to change the salary ordinance, which there's money in there. All right. I'm not going to try to do this, so Mr. Loudermilk or Mr. Auditor, explain to us exactly what we're voting on.
Voting to eliminate one lieutenant and add a chief of operations. That needs to have salary ordinance adjusted to do that. However, you have sufficient appropriation currently to accomplish that. That's number one. You're also starting a new position of major.
No, we're changing major to chief of operations.
Changing major to chief of operations.
So, President Morse?
Yes.
Salary ordinance 2020-01 pertains to
01.
Section A, Mayor Administrative Position, ROC 2020-03, correct? In the salary ordinance, it has 5 different issues before us. Amending the job title from Major to Chief of Operations, amending the job description, and then the job classification. And if we so choose to do something with the stipend, and then the status of the FLSA. And the other 2 matters could be handled together on a separate vote. The overtime and the payout for the sick time upon separation or retirement. So I guess we could be very simplistic here and start with item A and begin by amending from
Job
Major
title.
to Chief of Operations, and then we'll just sequentially move from there.
Okay, so salary ordinance 2020-1A, 2020-1B, right?
amend the order? Are you looking to amend this?
Well, this just covers everything. I mean, usually we vote on a title, then we vote on and then we vote on the salary, and then we change the salary ordinance. This is all listed together. That's what Mr. Mann, you got any comments?
I'm going to make a motion.
Yep.
I'm going to make a motion to amend salary ordinance 2020-01 to eliminate the second D, to make it E, therefore consisting of 5 parts, from the job title being amended to the FLSA status, all 5 parts, A through E. And I'm going to make a motion to amend the document to reflect 5 parts as noted, A through E.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I second.
Seconded. Mr. Mann made motion, seconded by Ms. Wager.
Council.
Yes.
Council President, of course. Should we make sure we're clear that all the highlighted information contained on the 2 documents is what we're moving forward with? So what is highlighted, the things that are highlighted as new, and the items that are stricken will be removed, just so everyone's clear.
It's my understanding, Mr. Loudermilk, that we're talking about F, A, and C on page 16.
Okay.
Is that correct?
Yes. But with that, it's not just the change in job title, it's the number of lieutenants has changed as well.
Yeah, that's it. He said F.
I just want to make sure that if everybody's clear, that is all, what is stricken is changed. The amended language is highlighted.
All right.
Okay, so.
Well, we have a motion on the floor to amend this.
I'm going to make sure I'm very clear, because Mr. Loudermilk, you made a very salient point. You're saying that C, being the lieutenant, being decreased from 6 to 5, is a component of this ordinance?
Correct, because you received the $3,500 coverage to get to the chief of operations by the elimination of 1 lieutenant's position.
And that can be covered under D, under stipend? Is that correct?
Yes. To get to the requested stipend?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Excuse me. As I understand, there are 2 separate ordinances you're dealing with. One is salary ordinance 2020-01, which obviously is a component of, will be reflected in the amended salary ordinance adopting salary schedule and compensation of merit officers. I think you can either do it as 1 or 2 motions, but I think Mr. Mann originally was dealing with the one issue in salary ordinance 2020-01 to indicate that FLSA status should be changed to E as opposed to the second D. I think, if it's my understanding also, that at this point, do we need, and Melissa, you might help me, do we need a request to amend the job title in 2020-01 as well?
There was a request.
Okay, and that's already.
And it is signed the job title.
Okay, the committee received it in this. Okay, so you're right, just the amendment for 2020-01 it appears the only thing that needs to be amended was the indication that the FLSA status should be labeled as E rather than D. Now, if you want to go ahead and make a part of your motion to also amend the an ordinance adopting County of Vigo, Indiana salary schedule and compensation policy of merit officers, as well as the attachment there too, as indicated in here, you can make that a part of your motion, or we can deal with that separately.
Yes, that's what we need to clarify.
My preference is to keep it separate, so we get this part done. And then we can pick up the additional part, should this pass.
Okay, we have a motion to amend this. Any other questions? Roll call vote, Mr. Auditor.
Ms. Burnett?
Aye.
Mr. Schweitzer?
Aye.
Mr. Mann?
Aye.
Ms. Sweger?
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk?
Aye.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Mr. Morris?
Aye. All right. Salary ordinance 2020-1 amended as recommended. Okay,
So now I need to ask it to be passed favorably by the council, because all we've done is amend it,
right.
correct?
Correct.
Yes.
So I make a motion to go to full council for approval of salary ordinance 2020-01 as amended.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Mann, seconded by Mr. Loudermilk. Any other questions? Hearing none, roll call vote.
Ms. Burnett?
Aye.
Mr. Schweitzer?
Aye.
Mr. Mann?
Aye.
Ms. Sweger?
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk?
Aye.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Mr. Morris?
Nay. Let the record record 6 for and 1 against. Salary ordinance 2020-01 passes. Okay. All right.
So now,
We have okay. Which amendment are we on now here? Which is item number?
B and C.
Amended salary ordinance, page 15 of your book, A and C. Okay.
Mr. President,
Yes, Mr. Mann.
these are separated out on our sheet, but they were both requests of council 2020-04.
Yep.
Is that correct? So in that regard, I make a motion for the council to approve the amended salary ordinance as presented to us this evening for adopting County of Vigo, Indiana salary schedule and compensation policies of merit officers.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Mann, seconded by Mr. Loudermilk to adopt the amendments to the Vigo County salary ordinance merit. Questions? Mr. Auditor, roll call vote.
Ms. Burnett?
Nay.
Mr. Schweitzer?
Aye.
Mr. Mann?
Aye.
Sweger?
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk?
Aye.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Mr. Morris?
Aye. Reflect the salary ordinance is amended. 6-1 vote. Okay, next item. We took care of A completely, correct? We were on to sick days.
We're good.
We are ready to move on, Mr. President.
Had adopted all of that. Okay.
Thank you. Sorry for all the confusion on this.
What's the big deal?
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. President, up next we have Mr. Robbins for Restructured Highway Department and addition of GIS Department, ROC. Number, cut off here, it looks like. Slate's ROC number 007, 20-007. And this is a multi-layered request involving salary ordinance 2020-03, GIS director, salary ordinance 2020-04, GIS technician, salary ordinance 2020-05, engineer highway director, salary ordinance 2020-07, superintendent. I skipped one. 2020-06, assistant engineer. Salary ordinance 2020-08, office manager. Salary ordinance 2020-09, assistant superintendent. Additional appropriation ordinance 2020-03, GIS department. Additional appropriation ordinance 2020-04, engineering. Reduction of appropriation 2020-01, auditor area plan. And reduction of appropriation 2020-02, highway administration. This was all heard during committee and passed through 3-0 favorable. I believe Mr. Robbins has a presentation for us.
I do. Members of the council, Larry Robbins, Vigo County Engineer. Would you like the full presentation, or would you like to slim it down some and discuss as we go?
I've heard it, so it's...
I think I can keep it short as we can go through this. The Commissioner's Office has asked me to look at restructuring the County Highway Department. So when I looked at that, I've been kicking this around for a few months now. So this is the plan that I came up with that going forward. So first off, why do we restructure? There's timing. There's some retirements that we've had. There's been also some departures in the past, so that makes it for an easier transition. We don't have employees in those positions to restructure. There also is a need for the creation of a GIS department. There are new rules and requirements that have been passed down by the state as far as highway funding goes with the MVH restrictions that are now what we have to adhere to. There are also continuing requirements for the community crossings program through the state. General need, I believe there's a lot of efficiencies that we can provide within county government. It would help be a tremendous planning tool to be able to look forward with the implementation of the GIS department. The overall service to the public would be a plus. That'd be something that I believe that can be improved. There is a particular need for training at this time. There are new techniques, new procedures, new technologies out there that I believe that we need to be staying up with, and the only way to do that is to complete that during training. Also, there's safety training involved with some of that can be upkept. Fleet management is another big issue. I know as council is aware, the highway department came last year for an appropriation to purchase 5 new trucks, new tandems, to help support, a depleting fleet. So that needs to be, a program needs to be installed to kind of look at that going forward. That's only a short-term fix for what's coming forward. Also, you need to look at that from an equipment standpoint and the small vehicles as well. I believe it will help with communication with the public. The Nixle program is one of those that could help with that, but also just pushing that data out, being receptive to the public, so they know what we're doing, when we're doing it, how it's going to affect them. And professionalism and just pride in your work. I think that's one of the things that we should strive for in anything we do. So how do we restructure? There's several key changes that I'm proposing here. One is to eliminate the assistant highway superintendent position. and also the GIS plat supervisor position in the auditor's office. The added responsibilities, obviously, with the engineer, the assistant engineer with some added responsibilities with some oversight. Also, the highway office manager, I'm going to be asking them to do more to stay on top of the budget issues and some of the ledgers to make sure that we're maintaining things we do, so we make sure we're conforming with those state requirements, that we don't jeopardize any state funding. And lastly, they would create the GIS department. That would entail a new, new GIS director position, as well as moving the GIS manager over from area planning. This is just it's hard to read on this slide, but this is just a organizational chart, that I put together. Highway director position over the top there, overseeing highway superintendent, engineering services, and the GIS director position, as well as the administration is just office personnel. That would for the various offices. So what's the cost? I looked at 12 counties of similar size to Vigo County that already operate in some capacity of this, where the engineer is directly over the highway. These were the salary of the 2018 compensation that I researched, what I found on the Indiana Gateway system. There are 3 outliers there. They're kind of being Boone, Vandenberg, and Hamilton County, which were making over 6 figures, which happy to do that if you'd like me to, but that was kind of outside of the means of what we talked about with the commissioners, what I discussed. So you eliminate those 3 outliers and you come up with an average salary of $90,000, almost $91,000. The proposed restructuring changes in salaries that I'm recommending now, obviously with the engineer position, become the highway director. The assistant engineer, I'm asking for a little bump for those added responsibilities. The assistant superintendent position would be eliminated. Highway office manager, I've requested to go from a COMOT C to a COMOT D, which would bump it a little bit as well. The GIS director is the new position that is being created. I've asked for that to be in Exec B, which is in that 60,000 range. The GIS plat supervisor is the position that's eliminated from the auditor's office, and the GIS technician, which would transfer from area planning over to the GIS department. Asking for a bump in that. That position in particular, our GIS manager currently has been stepping up tremendously and overseeing and helping out with the duties in the auditor's office to help that transition, since we did have a retirement late last year. Budget changes, I'll skim over this very briefly. I'm sure we'll have some discussion about this. The auditor's budget would decrease. The highway budget would decrease. Area planning budget would decrease. The 2 budgets that would increase would be the engineering budget and the GIS budget, which would be created. Now, whether that is in the engineering budget or with a standalone budget, that's something that we can discuss. During committee, Ms. Bennett asked for some examples on how GIS can help with some of our efficiencies and some of our production in the county. I have some boards here. You have a handout in your packet there that I provided you that has a map in it. I also have a graphic on the wall here. So these are drainage issues that we compiled. These were compiled. The yellow dots are drainage issues that the county has some responsibility in. They were compiled from this stack. These are all complaints that come through my office for any issue that any resident has had that call. So these are all problems that the county has some responsibility in maintaining. Could be all of the problem, could be part of the problem, whether it be a ditch that needs graded, or maybe a tree that needs removed, or some guardrail that needs fixed, or different issues like that. The orange dots on the map, it's hard to see on the presentation, but those are the bridges in the county. I have a list of maintenance items that was provided to me late last year by our consultant of 401 maintenance items that need done on those 200 bridges. A lot of that entails stems from mowing to fixing guardrail to joint replacement to sometimes some more substantial structure work. So that is all things that could be implemented into GIS. This map is an example of that. There is no data behind these points. These are strictly just taken from that and placed on a map. But if this was a GIS layer, there would be data and attributes tied to each one of those points. So when you clicked on it, it would tell you exactly what the problem was. You could have a picture of it. You could have a rating of it, 1 to 5, 1 being worse, 5 being, minor issues. You can query that by that rating. So you could bring up all the ones, know which ones you needed to fix, know which ones you need to get on immediately, which ones could last a little longer. If you were up in the northeast part of the county and you had a one you were going to work on, you could bring it up and see what other issues you had up there to make our processes more efficient. Currently I have a 3-man drainage crew that maintains almost all of the county. So you can see how that could be a little bit of a daunting task to try to stay on top of. So the more efficient we are, I think the better that we can be. So I believe that GIS department could provide that. Another example, this map is another map that's in your packet. This is a road ratings map from 2018. This was done by a consultant. We paid approximately $77,000 for this data to be entered, to be created in 2016, and then another $40,000 for it to be updated in 2018. The state requires us to update this every 2 years to be eligible for community crossings as part of our asset management plans. It's a good idea for us to have it anyway. If this is in-house, this is data that we could maintain and create with our own forces, and it could be updated much more recent than 2 years at a time. Currently, right now, that's what it's being maintained. Every 2 years, our road system is re-rated. So each one of those lines, each one of those road segments does have, that is a GIS layer that does have attributes attached to that. So it can tell us the condition of that road, when it was last paved, what treatments were done to it if it wasn't paved. With that, you can extrapolate data. I have a bar graph there that shows you, the interesting thing of that is those ratings are from a 1 to 10 scale. We have approximately 300 miles of roadway in Vigo County that's rated a 3. So you can see the discrepancy in where we are. GIS data really helps you identify that. You get a lot of people say, hey, my road is crap, but where's the data to support that? So another thing you can do is a pie graph. I got a pie chart there. This is something the state does on some of their road ratings, and this is something LTAP has really been pushed out. They rate their ratings are good, fair, poor. Poor being the 1 to 4 range, fair being the 5, 6, and 7, and then good being the 8, 9, and 10. So as you can see there in 2018, when this rating was done, there were 60% of Vigo County's roads rated in the poor category, which would be a 4 or less. So that's all useful data for planning moving forward. Like I said, this is something that a consultant has provided us that we paid for that I believe we should be doing in-house. And I believe we can extrapolate that to other departments as well. Surveyor's office has a need to categorize some of their section corners and keep those in GIS and maintain those. Make sure that information is backed up correctly. There's also needs, the health department was here earlier. They map out septic fields for houses. That could be a layer created in GIS that could be maintained. That way the inspectors had access to live data out there that could be in the field. If this was an online GIS map, they could pull up that point, that address, and see if it had a field, see if it had a system or what it had. So the sky's the limit as far as this, in my opinion. GIS was implemented on the county level in 2003 or 2004. It is not used any different today than the day it was implemented. And that, to me, is astounding. You have a piece of software that can be a useful tool for this. We need to be utilizing it the best we can, and I believe establishing this GIS department will give us that means to move forward. Ms. Bennett also asked for a sample budget. The only thing that I really include in there that I see a need for is the salaries. There is a line there of about $5,000 I included for training and education. Any office supplies, anything like that, I believe I can absorb into my existing budgets. The auditor's office has said that they might have some, they'd be able to participate in that as well. So I believe there are ways that we can kind of absorb this to keep that cost down. So really at the end of the day, once we establish this restructuring, establishing this GIS department, I think we can save the county money by doing that. So, and that's pretty much it. I tried to go through it as quick as I could. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to go back or we can discuss in detail.
Questions of Mr. Robbins?
I'll go first, if you don't care. So, Mr. Robbins, say a transmission goes out in a county highway plow truck and it's a $4,000 repair. Does the superintendent take care of that? Do you take care of that? Where does the responsibility lie in the automotive portion of it?
So you're saying, rephrase that, sorry. So there's an accident.
So we're up north and a transmission goes out and it's a $4,000 repair from the highway department, county garage. Does that fall under the superintendent or does that fall under you making decisions for that stuff? Or
Currently, right now, if something, it would fall under the highway department if it was a highway issue.
Okay.
In my role, I maintain the bridges and the drainage for the highway, for the county, I guess, as a whole. So it would only be under my purview at this point if it was a drainage problem or a bridge-related problem.
I'm sorry, that's currently, or that's under your new?
That's currently. Under the new one, it would all fall under me, obviously.
There we go.
Question. Are there any contractual consultant savings from assessor, surveyor, auditor, area planning, or health department?
I do not believe so. I don't think you're under contract with anyone. I believe Jim has an on-call if he needs help with some of the plat services. The assessor's office is under contract with Schneider. We're currently paying for, I believe, 10 licenses. At this date, we're currently utilizing one in plat mapping. I believe the assessor's office is using one. That's another thing that I'd like to clean up is if we get, right now we're paying for licenses that I believe we're not using. So it's county money that I believe is being wasted and that could be put to better use. With this GIS department, we could get the director in there that would get a grasp on that, get an idea of where to go and move on from there.
No additional cost in software?
Not that I see. The software that we have, I believe the licenses that we have currently would cover any new additions that we would have. There might be something if we get into the online support. That would be the only thing that would be the variable. I don't really have a good idea for that, if that's covered or not. But my hope is that with the licenses that we're paying for now, that could be covered under a new service. If we don't need that many licenses, that'd be money we would save that we could allocate towards utilizing services that we do need.
This allows us one less person in the auditor's office and one less in the area planning?
Correct, and that this would be pulling those GIS-related services from those departments. I can't speak for those departments as far as the other needs that they need, but the GIS portions, they would not, that would be satisfied under this new GIS department.
Questions?
Mr. President, tell me as a citizen of Vigo County, what will be the advantage to me of GIS? What can I use it for?
I believe that the general citizen of Vigo County, you're going to see better service from the highway department or from county government as a whole. I'll give you an example. If you wanted to come in and if you lived in the county on on a roadway and you wanted to come in and try to find the right-of-way for the roadway in front of your house, you could start in my office. I may or may not have it. I might have to send you to the auditor's office to look in the commissioner's record books. It may or may not be in there. I can send you to the surveyor's office to see if it was in there, if the road was changed names in the past. And you may or may not get an answer when you walk out of that door. And it's 2020, and I find that hard to believe that we can still function that way. That I think with the development of this GIS department, that we can clean all that up. We can make sure we know what the right-of-way is, where it is. If we don't have it, we need to go through the process of establishing it. Because as a citizen, if I want to come in and say, I want to know, what my right-of-way, what my boundary is, if I want to put a fence up there, I can't put it out to the road. Where can I put it? What's the right-of-way? And if I came in here and couldn't get an answer, I would be extremely frustrated. And I've dealt with that.
And then like the septic fields you're talking about and other departments of the county, you can tell that to the public.
Sure, absolutely. So if, for example, if the health department were to utilize this and we had a layer for septic fields, if somebody came in to get a building permit to put an addition on their house, maybe they just bought the house the year prior, they don't know where anything is. And in the past, there have been housing additions built on top of septic fields because nobody had a good map or not good idea of where they were. So this would provide that. They could have that data readily available. It's data that we already have. It's just pushing that data out there and being able to utilize it to help facilitate your job in the manner you can.
Good, thank you.
Mr. President, thank you. Trying to grasp. This is, it's encouraging. I'm hearing 4 departments: engineering, area planning, highway, auditor at a minimum. I'm hearing creating a new department. I'm looking at budget adjustment and annual budget. Mr. President, I'm not seeing how we can vote on this today. I greatly appreciate the work the Personnel Committee did. It would seem that this needs to go another step. I'm not encouraged by tabling it. I'm encouraged by making a recommendation that it go to a different committee to look at dollar numbers, to look at figures, to make sure we talk to the departments, to make sure they understand what is being deleted or added. There's a lot to consider here. The payroll amounts are different depending on how we're going to vote to create the positions. And so I don't know what your feeling is, Mr. Morris, but I do know that I think another set of eyes on this would be prudent at this point. This is something that's been long in the making. I know it's been a discussion at annual budget time to be able to look at implementation at some point. But this has a lot of components to it. And the quality of the questions tonight obviously indicate that there's been a lot of thought go into it already. And in terms of the departments impacted, the dollar amounts, the creation of a department, I would think we would want a fuller picture of just how this is going to impact the county government and the taxpayer.
Well, for one thing, we all are here. I mean, are there any other questions of we're the budget committee, we're the council, we're the complete group, and we've got the auditor here that keeps the books.
And I appreciate that, but we got these at 9:53 this morning. And so to be able to fully develop questions and to make sure that we are going to be able to ask the proper questions, I would think that it would be beneficial to this is pretty hefty. And I would think that something of this is a dynamic change for Vigo County.
So is there any additional questions of council members immediately tonight?
If I may, I would like to speak in support of Councilman Mann's proposal. We did get this information. I think it was mentioned earlier that the Personnel Committee had this information. I believe we had part of this information, and a lot of the rest of it for consideration we just did get today. So I am fully in support in general terms of the proposal. I think this is great. I think what Mr. Robbins wants to do has a lot of merit to it, but I do think it is appropriate for us to take a little bit more of a look at certain of the details.
And well, I'm trying to clarify this. In what, I mean, do you want to talk to the surveyor? Do you want to talk to the auditor's office about the plat mapping? Do you want to talk to the area planning? I mean, it seemed like that's might be some of the missing pieces you're looking for. Is that what you're talking about, or is it something different?
I would like to make sure that we have a discussion. The information you just provided is an excellent baseline to begin with, because we're going to be removing somebody from an office. We're going to be taking it out of where it currently was. So how is that impacted? How do we navigate that information? There's currently somebody employed in one of these positions.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
So, and is that person hired? Do they go somewhere else? How does that get developed? I know personnel decisions cannot be made in an open meeting, and so not something that we want to go down that line. But I think as the financial body, it would be to our benefit to start with those questions and just get all of our ducks in a row.
From my perspective, plat mapping, we are not losing anything. That position that there by this proposal, we're expanding it. It's going to provide services greater than what's been happening in there since we bought this GIS system. I mean, it's capable of so much more than what we've used it for, and I think this proposal allows us to do that.
Bruce Allen, the surveyor I see here. Bruce, could you come up to the microphone?
I might add that we've actually kind of been implementing that. Ryan from area planning has been fulfilling part of the role that Larry's been describing in the plat mapping department. Anyway, been covering his duties in area planning and serving plat mapping and learning that system.
For about 4 months, so it's not been a short-term thing.
Yeah.
I had a brief conversation with Bruce, and he was talking about how beneficial GIS would be for the surveyor's office and why we've not been using it for ever and ever. It was hard to understand.
Pretty much ever since it's been implemented, it's not been used, but just a minor part of what this thing is capable of doing. I mean, nobody knows what this is capable of doing. I mean, it's unbelievable system. For me personally, my stone perpetuation, we're in the process of GPSing every one of our survey markers out in the field, getting the coordinates on them. Hopefully, once we get this GIS coordinator in, they can put all that data in the machine, and I will be able to pretty much with the iPad or anything, my guys out in the field will pull up any stone location, give me the ties to it, any distance we need. I mean, it's going to be just an extreme benefit to our office, and this would be something that I wouldn't have to contract out we could do it in-house ourselves.
It would be a tremendous benefit to the taxpayers. I mean, I don't know a great deal about it, but it seems like it's going to save a lot of money.
Oh, yeah, I mean, right now, we take copies out with us, and if they're out in Pearson Township and somebody calls in with a problem in Riley, either they're gonna have to call in and try to get some of the current ties for Riley Township, because they don't take 3,000 sets of ties out with them every day. They would have to call in, and we would be able to have to look it up, call them back, and tell them where they needed to go and give them ties and all that. Whereas with this, they would have it right there in the vehicle, be able to go to whatever section they're in, pull that up, boom, there's the ties, even have photographs of it, you know, everything that we need right there at the fingers. I mean, and that's just my office. When the ransomware came in, our legal drains, all the watersheds were on there. When the ransomware came in, or happened, we lost all that. In order to get that back, I'll have to have a consultant come in and do it, probably Snyder. But with this, they can do it pretty simple. Simple for them because they know what they're doing. And I don't think it's gonna, I mean, I'm not speaking for area planning, but Ryan's going now pretty much in plat mapping almost full time over there trying to get everything going there anyway. So it's not that they're losing position, it's just transferring it over into the GIS department pretty much. I mean, so they're not gonna lose, they technically are losing position, but it's just sliding over into a different office.
What would be the downside if we would delay it a month? I mean, what happens if we do that?
Well, we do have some open positions that we're waiting to be posted as far as, you know, right now the assistant superintendent is operating the highway department, which is okay in a short-term basis, but if we get into much longer, we get into vacation time, who covers that? You know, that responsibility of who's there to oversee that. There are decisions that need to be made with that as far as, you know, on just a bureaucratic level to make sure everything functions the way it is. And the longer that goes, the more that's kind of in a gray area. It's kind of hard to function that way. The office manager position is still open. We could post that, but if the salary changes, then, you know, you might get more people that would want to apply. So until we know for sure what that salary is going to do, you know, I mean, I think the commissioners, the highway department, and myself are kind of leery about posting that. So now they're short-staffed up there as well, and they have been for a month and a half, going 2 months now. Like you said, Ryan has been assuming plat mapping duties and area planning since late October or somewhere around that time frame. So he's going on 4 months now where he's been helping out, pulling double duty to try to, you know, to help the county out, and he's willing to do that. But at what point does that become an issue for him as well? So, I mean, that's, the longer this goes, the longer it's tabled, the more we're in flux as far as where we go and the direction we go. So, I mean, I would urge you to, you know, I understand there are some questions, and I'd be happy to address them. And there's some semantics to this that are beyond what I'm capable of answering as far as how this gets advertised and all these things. So, but I'd be happy to answer any questions you need, but I would encourage we at least act on some part of this tonight.
Well, that's what I'm thinking. Are there two parts to this? Restructuring the highway department and establishing a new department?
Correct. There's restructuring of the highway department, and there's the establishment of the GIS department. So part of that, if we're restructuring, if you chose to act on that tonight, then you know, it would approve the restructuring of the highway side, which would be, that would basically mean that engineering and highway departments would be combined at that point. So that provides in itself a lot of efficiencies, a lot of disconnects that our two offices had in the past will go away. That will provide a great service to the county, but the rest of this as well, and the whole goal in restructuring this is to create this GIS department. So you don't get quite the savings amount. I guess it would still be the savings, but if you do it in two parts. But that could be an option if we do the highway side of it and then table the GIS and look at how that all tables, or works out. Yeah, and that leaves Jim hanging, so I won't speak for him. So, I mean.
This one seems like the most critical portion of this is right now is auditor's office. We didn't replace anybody in plat mapping.
Correct.
So.
Because Ryan right now is their GIS manager is pulling kind of double duty to try to make sure we provide those services that we are supposed to be providing by statute.
Do you guys see any reduction in staffing?
For this in particular?
Well, I mean, if you don't have people running from here to there to yon to whatever, I mean, would it take less people to operate one of these offices?
There could be some efficiencies, yes. I mean, I think that it could translate into that in the future. I don't want to speak to that without looking at that data. It's something, GIS is also a tool from a standpoint that, I've created this, layer of these 553 drainage issues. There's some for potholes, there's some, guardrail, there's a whole number of issues that the highway department deals with. And that could be, to see if we get more efficient, maybe, we do cut down on workforce, or maybe when, employees, retire or leave to go to other positions, then they're not replaced. But you're going to have that data to support that, whether you need that workforce or not. If you're keeping up or if you're falling behind, you're going to have that data to support that, and you're going to be able to use that because you have now a useful tool to be able to look into that. Same thing with any other department. If they were using it for anything, if Bruce is maintaining all of his sections and he's keeping up with that, then that's good.
So, Bruce, why aren't you using it now? Why aren't you putting data in it?
Because when this was very first implemented, we had a half a day training on this over in Indianapolis in a room of like probably 50 people. Really don't have anybody with the background that it takes to do this. I mean, once we get it established, like our section corners and stuff, then my guys could go in and maintain it. But it's getting it established is the problem. And with Ryan being so stretched out, going from area planning to the auditor, and I mean, he tries to help us out too, but it's kind of hard.
What's he doing? Putting data in or what?
Right now, he's doing stuff for Jim. I don't know what he does for Jim as far as the tax parcels and all that stuff.
So to implement this, whenever it was 10 years ago or 12 years ago or whatever, we needed a new person in every department to enter data, to do data entry, and that's why we haven't used it?
I'm not saying that. We've used it, and I mean, we've maintained the election maps and everything like that, but all this has been lost over the, with the ransomware, and it's going to cost to have a company come in and put it back up, then we can maintain it again.
It also changes. I mean, there's updates to the software, to the system. These things are constantly changing, and for us to keep operating the way we are, we're not going to be able to continue to do that.
And two people are going to do that?
Two people can go to the training to be able to stay up on the updates and make sure that when they are creating the maps, that if they are working with someone in Bruce's office that can do the updates, someone in Bruce's office could do the legwork to collect the data. They could bring it back here, it could be uploaded, and I believe two people could do that.
So you don't see any additional new hires to gather all this data?
I do not. I mean, anytime, the legwork of creating a lot of these is the upfront. In discussions that I've had in the past, some of that data collection can be done with interns, some of them free.
Yeah, but we don't know that. I mean.
We don't know that.
And also, I mean, we talked before the meeting about the culvert pipes, and you said you were close to 500 behind or so. Are you going to require more employees to get that stuff done, to catch that up?
No. What I would do is the efficiencies in the highway department when I took over, I would help alleviate that to get on top of those issues because in my opinion, that's a disservice to the county. In collecting that data, my goal would be to have a online GIS that the supervisors could have an iPad. They could collect that data while they're out there. The road inventory, they drive the roads every day. There's no reason they can't rate them while they're out there.
So you think you can cover the iPad costs or whatever technology you need in your budget already?
I believe we could, yes. And the highway has equipment funds that we can purchase, and there's some other things that we can do to cover that. I could restructure some of my budget if I need to pledge some of that. Ultimately, I believe this is the right thing for the county to do. I think that it's going to make what we do more efficient, and I think that's an overall good thing for the county.
What's the time span to implement?
As far as full implementation, there'd be a process to that.
Well, you're giving us a time frame that if we don't do this, that we might do this, and this might happen. I mean, I guess, how do we handle those things in the meantime? He lost all his data, and he hasn't had that for months, and
correct.
Jim hasn't had personnel.
Yeah, that data would have to be redone. I'm not sure how we'd have to continue to function the way we are with area planning covering the auditor's office at this time. If you post those positions and this is out here, then you may be advertising for a position that you're going to eliminate. I mean, I don't think you'll have too many people apply for that, but that's one of the reasons this is a unique opportunity to be able to restructure this is because we did have the vacancies.
Okay.
But the longer those go, the more problems it creates.
Okay. Superintendent, office manager, assistant superintendent. How is that a change in the current?
The assistant superintendent that position would be eliminated. With me overseeing the highway, kind of replace that. The superintendent would then only be in charge of all the day-to-day activities of planning for the unit supervisors.
And you have 3 or 4 people in the office now at the highway department.
Correct. There are 2 positions up there now, with a third to being the office manager that's vacant.
Okay.
And then included in that is a part-time administrative assistant that I have in my office now.
And you felt at budget time that needed to be made full-time. Is that right?
Yes.
Could that piece of person go to office manager at the highway department?
It's an option. I'd have to look at that. But that is an option.
I mean, I don't know what the requirements are, but.
Right. I believe HR-wise, it would have to be posted anyway, so all of these positions would have to be posted. So, I mean, assuming this got approved today, if we posted the jobs tomorrow, you're still several weeks to a month before you fill them. So if you table it and then you post it, you're not only talking about 1 month, you might be talking about 2 to 3, depending on how long it gets to be worked out.
Okay. Personnel committee was favorable with the way that this was spelled out and with their analysis of their cost savings and what have you. Restructuring the highway department and what have you. So their defense of that, I guess, and your presentation, I would say I think we can vote on it if you want to. If you don't want to, Mr. Mann, write or vote it down.
Well, Mr. President, if I may,
Yes, certainly.
page 25 has no dollar amounts. So we're looking at highway superintendent, job description amended, and there is no dollar amount on my sheet. It shows that it's to go to B, 60,313. I think I heard the assistant superintendent is gone.
They're just in the job description.
So there doesn't need to be a requested amount in the salary ordinance?
No.
It's already in there. It's just a bit of the job description.
Basically, that was just who that position reports to.
Is that person going to have more responsibility?
Same responsibility, it would just, instead of reporting to the commissioners directly, it would report to me first.
What's the positive of reporting to you and not the commissioners?
Just leadership in general, making sure that everyone's on the same page. It's hard to, if someone has a boss that they report to other than you, it's hard to get them to do what you want them to do, as far as direction.
That was kind of
So,
my question
I don't
about the
wanna-
repair costs.
Yeah.
Because they're eventually just gonna have to go straight to the commissioner for that.
Correct.
So,
So you were talking about like a highway truck.
sure.
Okay, I mistook
Yeah.
that, so yeah.
So what's the negative to reporting to you? To the engineer, not you. What's the negative to the engineer instead of going directly to the commissioners?
You mean the negative as far as reporting for the highway superintendent
Of the
reporting to me?
change. Of the change. If they currently report to the commissioners and they no longer report to the commissioners, what's the downside to that?
I don't see a downside. I mean, I think that this is all going to be a positive thing. And I think that the direction that they need, some of the training that I can provide with them and focus them on, I think would help benefit the county. I'm not sure what the negative would be.
Councilman Mann, are you talking about the engineer reporting directly into the highway as opposed to an all-county position like the commissioner?
Currently, the highway superintendent reports to whom?
Commissioners.
And in the new plan, who does that person report to?
Highway director, engineer.
So I've got the benefits of reporting to the engineer. What would be the cost to the highway superintendent instead of, because right now they have the ear of the commissioners.
Correct.
And they're going to lose the ear of the commissioners. There's going to be a step before they can go to the commissioner.
Correct.
And there's no downside to that.
Would there be an upside to providing all employees a direct link to the commissioners? I mean, is any
I
employee?
appreciate the question from a question, but I'm just trying to figure out here. Currently, the commissioners are the executives, but the commissioners are going to relinquish control in this area.
I wouldn't say they were going to relinquish control. The control is still going to come through me to the superintendent. So if the commissioners want something of the highway department, it would just come through me, and then that would be directed. Part of that is making sure that the commissioners, what they want is properly conveyed.
I got that, but right now, they just go to the highway superintendent.
Correct.
So I'm trying to figure out here.
I guess that would be the negative. They would no longer report to the commissioners. They would have to report to me.
On each one of these. We have to vote on one of these. Let's present them.
Just to add some clarification here, when this project was started last July, late June, early July, it was born out of several things, the need for the GIS position, how we can make things work, efficiencies throughout the different departments. As far as this leadership structure goes in the highway department, this is what progressive counties in the state are doing. In mid-March, many of us will be at what they call Purdue Road School. When we go there this year, you will see this structure. Commissioners, the county engineer, and then the highway department falls underneath. It's not that Bobby doesn't report to us. When you get down to it, they all do in some form. But structure-wise, this gives Larry more of an opportunity to merge departments. This gives him more buy-in. Instead of Larry having to go to us and then us transfer down to Bobby, it's a direct path. Not that there's an issue now, but this is just a consistent realignment. It's unique to Vigo County thing, but it's not unique. This is the right way to do it. I think I may have shared in the last meeting, or that may have been the committee meeting where I approached and talked about this. Area planning falls in this same world too in other counties. Falls underneath the county engineer. That's why we're seeing the engineer's salary increasing, because the engineer has more responsibilities. When I was on the council with you, we voted on this position. That's when we learned that the state provides about 40% of the engineer's salary, or how does $40,000 towards it. That made it more palatable. That was being done for counties to help with this model. So it's not that it pulls away anything from the commissioners. It's still under us. What it does is it just helps align everything. And it does address the issue that we no longer have a superintendent, that we pull Bobby up in that position. We're not necessarily filling those assistant superintendents. And it's a way to kind of avoid that. It's a net gain in the end.
So Commissioner, you guys are in charge of area planning currently.
No, yes, it's through a board. We appoint the board.
So are you going to merge that and reduce the size of that office?
There's been talk about that.
Talk's cheap.
Yeah. But we've been working on this for 6 months. This is the first big, or more than that, 8 months. This is the first big step in these efficiencies. And it's not to downsize by any means. If anything, I would like to see us increase. And here's something to look at. When we look
Transfer
at
somebody from area planning to road crew?
I don't know. But when you look at our permit system, we have realized that people are not paying for permits. We need to have a full-time person in there so that they can come in here and get their permits. They can get their questions answered. Marty, our permit guy, he's out on the road doing his job. By having, I say this anecdotally, by having more staff members, we're able to provide resources for those people that are coming in and paying us money for the permits. I mean, and I know it's a stretch, but these are a lot of things that we've looked at. We're looking at.
Are you talking about the permitting service paying for itself?
No, I'm saying that more revenue could come in. Oh, never. I don't think it'll ever pay for itself.
Well, what do you tell somebody that's pulled a permit in October of last year and had to call and get an extension twice now to get a culvert pipe put in?
Is that because they couldn't what?
The drainage wasn't working. They came in, pulled a permit. The person went and bought 3 brand new culvert pipes.
Okay.
His yard's currently flooded, basement's flooded. He pulled a permit in October, and it's February.
Currently, I apologize profusely, because this is one of the issues that I'm dealing with now.
I just don't see how, if you're going to make this more efficient and you're going to get more, how you're not going to have to hire more.
Right now, this is one of the disconnects between engineering and highway. That drive pipe technically serves that property owner. That is a highway issue. It's access to the highway road. The only thing it has to do with engineering currently right now is to maintain the drainage in the ditch, keep the water off of the right-of-way, off the roadway. For whatever reason, and I can't speak to that, that was split out years ago. That become the purview of the engineering department. I have a 3-man drainage crew to maintain the 553 issues that I have right now. And things do slip through the cracks because we are extremely inefficient in what we do. And I would like to be extremely more efficient in what we do. And that's why I'm here before you today, to try to get this structure with, for example, me over the highway. Then I could dedicate more crews to do projects like that so we can maintain those.
To add on that, Councilman Schweitzer, this is how the GIS component works. Every Monday at 9 o'clock, the commissioners gather with leadership in the highway department, and everybody's here. And we go over needs. I use my own GIS system. I have a Google Maps system. I have my own iPad. And I have my own GPS tethered to it. When I drive around and I see issues, I pin them. So when we're in our meetings, I've got that map. And that's me. There's 2 other commissioners. I made up my own system. If we had a GIS system, then we can tie that into a work order tracking system. We don't have a work order tracking system now. That way, when we see red flag, I mean, we forget about stuff. I forget about stuff. An issue today is going to be forgotten about 4 days later if I don't record it properly. You're in IT, Lisa, or Councilman Spence-Bennett. You know how this works. This helps us be more efficient. Those issues, Chris, that you and I deal with when people call us and they're mad because stuff's not getting done, you call me, who do I call? Okay. If he doesn't have direct control over that department, it may not get done. If he does have direct control over it, whose fault is it? Who do we blame? This guy that we just gave the raise to make it more efficient. This all works together seamlessly. I work with Neil and Russ back there all the time on drainage issues, and it gets frustrating for here's a key example. East Milner Avenue, I say it wrong every time. Milner Avenue. Milner Avenue, we're getting ready to do a big paving job. 2 miles. Bobby? Give me 2 miles. So I drove out there Wednesday, and I went along and I pinned on my Google Map system where culvert areas need attention. I'm not an engineer, but if I see grass and dirt growing over a pipe and water standing there, to me, that means there's probably an issue. So we're getting ready to do paving. Why would we pave that without doing the culverts first? Which is what we did on Old East Maple, but that was my decision. I made the decision to pave the road first before doing the culvert pipes because the road was in such bad shape. It was going to take us all summer, our crew, all summer to fix those culvert pipes. We had to get the road paved. With this system in place, we can have somebody that tells us what to do. On Wednesday, I'm driving roads for community crossings. Bobby gave me a list, and what I do with that list, I didn't use it because I went out to these areas, I looked at the roads. While driving, I noticed other roads that were in worse shape. So at the 11th hour, we completely changed our submission for our grant process. And we moved from roads that we can get by with today to roads that needed help. If we had a GIS system, I tell you, I can't tell the difference between red and green. Some of us are colorblind. I can't use those maps. A GIS person can make these maps more effective for us. They can give us a rating, and then we can base our grant requests and our dollars spent that you allocate off real data versus anecdotal driving around.
Have you all compared the structure and staffing of these 2 operations combined to another county's size and operation? So, for example, that's similar in what they have to cover and similar size, whatever makes a difference, right?
Sure.
So you have some comfort that with this structure and this staffing, you've got another parallel that you've looked at that tells you if you've talked to that county, and of course I hope you've talked to them to see if they're being successful with that staffing and that structure, because that might tell you that this staffing and structure could be successful here.
At the last AIC, or whatever acronym it is for what the county commissioners go to, I talked to several road guys because Larry did a great job. I wanted to make sure that I had a level of confidence and comfort with moving forward. And with talking with these other counties about how they're doing things, I felt better about it. If I didn't feel good about it, I wouldn't be up here right now. This is incredibly important. Timing is of the essence because we're going to be looking at community crossings grants again in July 1st for the second round.
We don't give awarded the full amount.
If we need those efficiencies, we need that expertise to help us get more money. That we have the potential of less opportunities. My roads guys are falling apart. District 1 has the worst road base in the county. It's sand, it's fly ash at one time, the roads are junk. I am concerned that I'm going to have roads fall apart in my district. David, up by your house, it's bad. Mike, not too bad in your area because investment has gone in that section of the county. But the north end's being neglected. The Sealyville area is being neglected. And we need to have finite data, finite info, expertise to do this. Ryan, who's been working for everybody, the guy's amazing. You're in a hardship because of this part-time situation. We need balance there. And, you know, as I was laying up or sitting up against the wall, I'm thinking, okay, what could we motivate, or how could I motivate you to pass a component today? Realistically, if you do a component, it's not going to work the way that it needs to. We almost need this whole package to go to make this effective. So much work and energy has gone into this, and we wanted to make sure that we did not waste your time, that we were very prepared, and we had everything for you. I don't know what happened at 9:53 this morning, what was sent to you. If you didn't get the information you timely, I'm sorry about that. And I would hate for that issue to railroad this moving forward. If that is going to happen, then we will make sure that we get you the information before the next opportunity.
Are there any other questions?
Yeah, because I'm rambling.
Yes, you are.
The GIS department right now is all ones. So there's no request for 2s, 3s, and 4s. Does the GIS department exist right now? So won't they come back before us at some point with some dollar amounts?
Presently, we'll cover it out of our existing budget. If they need, if they need a box of paper or whatever office supplies are necessary, we've got that. Between me and Larry.
Correct, and
Next, when we submit the budget for next year, you know, perhaps, you know, we'll.
right,
we'll have
so
office
my
supplies.
plan is, the way it gets implemented is these positions, the GIS director and the GIS technician, would be an added salary line in my budget in engineering. And I'd use GIS budget as an example for what it could be if it was a standalone department or whether it was included within engineering. Either way works for me. It doesn't matter to me because I want to get it implemented so we can start reaping the benefits of these efficiencies. Any training, I have some training that I could contribute to if they need it this year. By the time we get somebody, you know, hired for this, you know, at that point we'd be in the budget season and we could ask for that next year.
Okay. I'm ready to call for a vote on this, Mr. Loudermilk. You want to go through these? See if you get a motion on any of them.
Sure. Yes, we can start with salary ordinance 2020-03, GIS director. It's on page 21. The information regarding the job description is on page 57 in your book. And then we also have the document from Wagner, Irwin, and Shealy, which outlines each of these individually. So salary ordinance 2020-03, GIS director. Item A, job title. B, job description. C, job classification. And D, FLSA status.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second. Motion by Ms. Wagner, seconded by Mr. Thompson.
Mr. Morris?
Yes, questions?
My reading of this says it comes out of GIS Department 0170.
The way we've got it set up, it's a new department.
Doesn't need to be created?
This is creating it.
By voting for it, we are creating a new department.
Correct.
And right now, there are no dollars in that. There's $0.
This will be the department.
President, I still say, if this had been given the opportunity to go to a council one more time for 1 month, this could have been streamlined. This, I have no question the merits of this. It sounds like people are going to support it. But we're being asked to create a department out of a fund that doesn't exist.
No, the fund exists, the general fund. It's another, essentially what we're doing is, it's a transfer, we could have done it by transfers, but we're doing it, creating these positions by reducing the appropriations that we previously mentioned and doing a full additional for that department. I thought that would be the clearest way to show what's happening.
Okay, if I may, Mr. President.
Yes.
General fund dollars have already been appropriated.
Correct.
This job does not exist at this time.
No.
So if it gets approved, it will come out of the surplus, county surplus and general fund, or it comes out of the general fund itself.
It's an appropriation out of the general fund that they're looking at, funding the majority of it with current appropriation. Now, there will be some, I believe that the total is probably a little bit higher than what the current appropriation currently. We will be funding some of it out of surplus, unappropriated funds.
Am I interpreting, I think I'm counting, I don't know if I did this right. I had $163,000 in one additional appropriation and 21,000 roughly in another. And then reductions of 135 and 57. Is that right? Am I looking at that the right way based on what you just said, Calissa? So that they're not quite the same. I mean, that's not, I got it 184 and 192. Is that, am I looking at that the right way?
Out of the general fund, the additional appropriation is 163, and the reduction is a total of 135.
Right, but 2004 has a 20,822.
That's different funds.
Okay.
I mean, it still speaks to the total top.
The total. Okay.
All right,
It's
Mr.
coming out of
President.
different
Yes.
pockets.
But not the GIS section.
I'm sorry? Mr. Auditor, what did you say?
I said it's coming out of various pockets, your savings. Or buckets.
So okay, Mr. President, if I'm hearing this correctly, I think we've moved the train a little bit. The auditor's office at this time, the engineer's office at this time, is earmarking current dollars to go for the creation of this.
End area plan.
So the actual out of county general cost will only be the additional dollars that those departments cannot cover.
Correct.
30 will show you the reduction from general funds. Of the 135,678. And we listed the appropriations for the general fund was 163,032, I think, to cover kind of so there would be your difference.
But then there's 2002 reduction with another 57, Cheryl, right?
And
That's listed as county general.
Oh.
Okay.
Right.
So are we also using, if I may, are we also using then funds out of highway for any of these positions? So highway remains separate. It is not going to be combined with engineering. So those highway dollars, so theoretically, if the highway dollars are increased, can more go to paving? Can more go to culvert work? Can more?
Theoretically, there's a possibility.
Yes, that is a possibility.
Okay, so the taxpayer could see an increased use of dollars towards the product, the roads, the gravel, the asphalt, the culverts,
Correct.
whatever.
Yep.
From the highway department.
Because you're reducing it.
Okay.
That position.
Okay. Mr. President, I appreciate your patience with me.
You like to clarify things, it helps all of us.
So, area planning is not going to lose any dollars. They're going to maintain their current, no.
Their budget will be reduced.
Budget will be reduced.
30.
All right, so they will be reduced.
They will be reduced by the amount of the position.
Okay, if you want, maybe I've taken Brian's position from area planning, essentially, and moving it to the new GIS department. We're taking plat mapping supervisor and moving it to that new department.
Okay. So that's what we're voting on in this first one?
Yes, this is to establish the department and the GIS director position and their salary.
Okay. So, Mr. President, from what I'm hearing, and make sure you're hearing it is right now, this $60,313 request to create this position is going to be a combined effort from the various departments in order to begin the creation of this department, and that happens this evening.
That's what we'd like.
And that's what the auditor's office wants. That's what the engineer's office wants. It's what the commissioners want. It's what highway wants. And the surveyor, yes. Okay, Mr. President, thank you for your patience.
You got the assessor back there, you can ask him too.
He's the guy that pays for the system.
Good answer.
Gotcha. I appreciate it. And
That's what I mean, you got, I mean, he's here.
a budget is a puzzle. And you're trying to solve that puzzle. And so if we're being tasked tonight to put that puzzle together, I'm going to compliment the people who are up here to get somebody like me to understand this. That we're understanding that it is good for the county, and that departments right now are indicating that they are going to be working together in trying to move this forward with little additional cost at this time out of county general.
Right.
And improve service to our clients, the people.
This is, with the vacancies we have, this is a unique opportunity to reorganize.
Thank you.
Any other questions? We have a motion.
I just want to make one clarification.
You're not on council?
This needs to be for the vote.
Okay.
All right. I have provided you with an updated job description for GIS director and GIS division. The only thing that changed was the department they belong to. Instead of highway, it should say GIS. So it's been upgraded. So just because when you look at page 57, it says highway. Just so that we're clear what we're on.
Okay. Motion and seconded. I would, Mr. Auditor, roll call vote, please.
Ms. Bennett?
Aye.
Mr. Schweitzer?
Aye.
Mr. Mann?
Aye.
Ms. Weger?
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk?
Aye.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Mr. Morris?
Aye. Mr. Loudermilk, you want to present this next one?
Sure. Next up, we have salary ordinance 2020-04 GIS technician. The salary ordinance is on page 22 of your booklet. And on page 65 is the job description. Again, we also have information contained within the memo from WIS. The current position is a Pat A at $42,806. What is requested, I'm sorry, Pat B, I apologize, $42,806. What is requested is Pat B, $45,006, non-exempt status. Again, we have job title, job description, classification, and the status.
Do I have a motion?
I move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Lauterbach, second by Ms. Wager. Any other questions? Hearing none, Mr. Auditor, a roll call vote, please.
Ms. Benet?
Aye.
Mr. Schweitzer?
Aye.
Mr. Mann?
Aye.
Ms. Wager?
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk?
Aye.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Mr. Morris?
Aye. Let record show 2020-4 GIS technician adopted unanimously. Mr. Loudermilk.
Next up, salary ordinance 2020-05, engineer highway director. The salary ordinance is contained on page 23, the job description that's on page 83. And looks like it's a change and reclassify engineer to engineer highway director. There was provided amendments to the job description, and we had the recommendations from WIS before us. What is being requested is in the Exec C classification with a salary of $90,623 with an exempt FLSA status. Looking at some of the information we have before us, what came back was Exec C was the recommended job classification for this newly reclassified position from engineer to engineer highway director.
We have a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Thompson, seconded by Ms. Wager. Any other question or discussion?
Larry, do you promise this is going to work?
I promise.
Mr. Auditor, roll call vote.
Ms. Benet?
Aye.
Mr. Schweitzer?
Aye.
Mr. Mann?
Aye.
Ms. Wager?
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk?
Aye.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Mr. Morris?
Aye. Let the record reflect, let's see, is that 2004? 05, excuse me. Engineer Highway Director, adopted unanimously. Mr. Loudermilk.
Yes, next up, salary ordinance 2020-06, assistant engineer. Salary ordinance is on page 24, job description page 95. Amendments were provided to the job description. The request was an Exec B at $69,130. The recommendation from WIS was an Exec B as well. Also, FLSA status of exempt.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
There should be a C.
What?
What's the other one?
Oh, ABD. So on the salary ordinance, it reads job description A, subsection A, job description amended, subsection B, job classification, subsection should be C, it's listed as D, FLSA status.
Do we have to change that? Can we leave it as D?
It'd work. I think it would work.
There's a
Okay.
Section 2, that for the said fiscal year, there is appropriated out of the county general fund. Mary?
It should be what?
So 2020.
It's 2020-05 and
So we need to amend the salary ordinance as listed in our book?
on 24, technically 2025 and 06. On section 2, it states appropriate out of the general fund, but it's actually.
Okay, so the previous salary ordinance needed to be amended?
We've already acted on it.
I know.
I know.
Mr. Councilman, our council, I would
Better check all of them. They're all like that.
You think they are?
trying to get through these things. I'm not trying to do it incorrectly.
Yeah, they are. No, that's okay. That is general. That one is general. That's okay.
Do we need to rescind that?
Good way, but yes, I would say you can rescind or.
Amend it?
Rescind and then amend and then adopt.
The next two, all right.
Well,
Let's
first of all,
read ahead.
2020-05 would have to be rescinded.
Right. You guys comfortable with that? Get the wording correct? Yeah.
If the county attorney says it's appropriate, then we'll support that. If the county attorney is questioning it,
I'm sorry.
That's freezing.
Well, except that this is, I understand. That's what I'm saying. They still have to. Yeah. I'm sorry. What was your question?
I didn't have one.
Should we rescind 2020-05?
I would.
Amend it, correct it, amend it, and repass it?
Exactly.
Okay. I would entertain a motion to rescind 2020-05 under advice of our council.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Thompson, seconded by Ms. Wager. All those in favor? By aye. Aye. Opposed? None. Okay. So we need to adopt a amended appropriation. You guys want to put the wording in here correctly?
Mr. President?
Yes.
Would you make a record of the vote on rescission?
The vote on rescinding was unanimous on salary ordinance 2025. Now we review the amended. We want to amend it.
I'll make a motion to amend salary ordinance 2020-505, section 2, to say engineering rather than general fund.
Second.
Motion made to amend by Councilman Thompson, seconded by Wager.
What's her name?
Councilwoman Wager. Mr. Auditor, roll call vote, please.
Mr. President, have we officially stated what's being amended?
Yes. Changed section 2 from general to engineering fund.
He said.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mann, we didn't hear Mr. Thompson's amendment. Any other clarification? Okay. Would entertain a roll call vote, please.
Ms. Bennett?
Aye.
Mr. Schweitzer?
Aye.
Mr. Mann?
Aye.
Ms. Wager?
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk?
Aye.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Mr. Morris?
Aye. Let the record reflect that salary ordinance 2020-05 was amended unanimously. I would entertain a motion to adopt salary ordinance 2025.
So move.
Second.
As amended.
As amended.
Second, Becky?
Yes.
Okay. Motion by Councilman Loudermilk, seconded by Councilwoman Wager. Roll call vote, Mr. Auditor.
Ms. Benet?
Aye.
Mr. Schweitzer?
Aye.
Mr. Mann?
Aye.
Ms. Wager?
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk?
Aye.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Mr. Morris?
Aye. All right, Mr. Loudermilk, do you want to take over again for your salary orders 2020-06?
Sure. So we spoke on that earlier. I'd like to offer an amendment to Salary Ordinance 2020-06, Section 2, strike Vigo County General Fund to Engineering Fund. And then also, just below, under Assistant Engineer, you have the 3 subsections. For the third section, strike the D and change it to C for the FLSA status.
Okay, motion?
There's my motion to amend.
Okay, motion made by Mr. Loudermilk as well.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Thompson. Questions? Mr. Auditor, roll call vote, please.
Ms. Benet?
Aye.
Mr. Schweitzer?
Aye.
Mr. Mann?
Aye.
Ms. Wager?
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk?
Aye.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Mr. Morris?
Aye. Mr. Loudermilk.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to approve the amended Salary Ordinance 2020-06 as amended.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Loudermilk, seconded by Mr. Thompson. Any questions? Hearing none. Roll call vote, please, Mr. Auditor.
Ms. Benet?
Aye.
Mr. Schweitzer?
Aye.
Mr. Mann?
Aye.
Ms. Wager?
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk?
Aye.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Mr. Morris?
Aye. Mr. Loudermilk,
Yes.
President of 2020-07.
Salary Ordinance 2020-07. We have before us the salary ordinances listed on page 25. Page 73 contains the job description. Amendments were provided to the job description. The request was just for reclassification. There's no change in requested classification. There was minor modifications to the job description only, involving how they report to the superintendent.
Scott.
Section
General
2.
fund, highway.
Yeah, I wanted to cover that for, yeah, sure, thank you. So that's what we have. Again, we have information from WIS before us. This too will need an amendment. So if there are no questions or comments, I would offer amended language.
Is that a motion?
Yes, I'd like to amend Section 2, which says that there's appropriated out of the Vigo County General Fund, strike Vigo County General Fund, and the new language State Highway Fund.
Second?
I second.
Motion to amend, Mr. Loudermilk, seconded by Mr. Thompson. Questions? Hearing none. Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Benet?
Aye.
Mr. Schweitzer?
Aye.
Mr. Mann?
Aye.
Ms. Wager?
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk?
Aye.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Mr. Morris?
Aye. Okay. Amended ordinance.
Council President Morris, I'd move to approve the amended salary ordinance 2020-07 as just presented.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Loudermilk, seconded by Councilman Thompson. Questions? Hearing none. Why don't you start this in? Roll call vote.
Mix them up. Mr. Morris?
Aye.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk?
Aye.
Ms. Wager?
Aye.
Mr. Mann?
Aye.
Mr. Schweitzer?
Aye.
Ms. Benet?
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk, please.
Yes. Next before us, we have salary ordinance 2020-08. The ordinance is contained on page 26, and the job description is on page 105. what we have before us is there are amendments provided to the job description, change and reclassification from office manager to accounting office manager. The current classification is Comet C at $20.05 an hour. Requested is Comet D, $21.38 an hour. We have information from WIS before us. Before we are to act on this too, we need an amendment. If there aren't any questions or comments, we could offer the amendment at this time.
Is there a motion? Yeah.
True, with the amendment, they need to offer up a subsection C, job title change.
What? Again?
The job titles being changed from office manager to accounting.
Accounting/office manager.
Council President Morris, I'd like to make an amendment to salary ordinance 2020-08 if I could.
Okay.
So in section 2, strike Vigo County General Fund, and the amended language be Highway Fund. And then also add subsection C for the change in classification of the job from office manager to accounting office manager for the job title. Yes.
Okay.
Second.
Amendment made by Mr. Loudermilk, seconded by Councilman Thompson. Any other questions?
May I ask, I'm sorry, you might have mentioned this earlier, but the change in the job duties is or are what for this?
I'm going to require them attend some other seminars as well as take on some other roles there in the office to help make sure that we're doing the things to help make sure that the highway is doing things properly to comply with the new MVH restrictions.
So there's kind of an oversight, compliance, analysis
Right, and if there's something
thing
that,
going on there?
Yeah,
Okay.
something to keep in, because 50% of that MVH budget has to be split out and allocated towards construction, reconstruction, and preservation. And if we don't adhere to that, there are consequences with that. So I'd like a position to specifically follow that and make sure that that is what we are staying on top of.
Okay, thank you.
What was the recommendation from WIS? Keep it at C?
Yes. Yes, looks like the recommendation says based on our assessment, the position factors within the Comment C job category. Therefore, it's recommended that the position remain classified Comment C and non-exempt. It includes in here on their assessment the added job duties to include ensuring compliance with state requirement for funding and preparing and submitting annual operations report. Is that fair?
Yep.
Any questions about that?
Yeah, because what's requested is to go to Comet D, even though the recommended classification was Comet C.
You'll change the ordinance? I have a motion, we have a second to amend it at some point. We'd have to withdraw that, or we can vote on that, and then we can vote on another additional amendment on this salary ordinance, see if it goes. Guess we could do that. Okay. Hearing no more discussion, Mr. Auditor, roll call vote.
Quick end. Mr. Morris?
Aye.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk?
Aye.
Ms. Wager?
Aye.
Mr. Mann?
Aye.
Mr. Schweitzer?
Aye.
Ms. Budnick?
Nay.
All right, now, have the ordinance presented to us, or any other amendments to this ordinance? You can amend it more than once, can't you?
Yeah. Okay, you've not passed it, sure.
Mr. Mann, do you want to make an amendment to that C or D?
No.
Well, I would make a motion to take the recommendation of WIS and make it a C and rather instead of a D. I would make that motion.
Make it C rather than a D.
Yes.
I move that we change the ordinance to the classification C rather than D as recommended by WIS.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any other discussion?
I think you have two motions.
Sorry, I should have
No,
seconded. I
you
probably should have,
seconded.
I should have, second.
Okay, sorry. Okay.
So what does that do to the dollar amount? Does that put it back at 2005, 2005?
2005 would be the approved column.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
This is to amend, correct?
This is amend, yes. And from D to C for designation. Mr. Auditor, roll call vote.
Ms. Burnett?
Aye.
Mr. Schweitzer?
Aye.
Mr. Mann?
Aye.
Ms. Swager?
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk?
Nay.
Mr. Thompson?
Nay.
Mr. Morris?
Aye. Salary ordinance 2020-8 amended. Salary ordinance 2020-8 as amended, presented for a motion. Is there a motion to adopt?
I move that we adopt the amended salary ordinance 2020-8.
Is there a second?
Second.
Made motion by Ms. Burnett, seconded by Councilman Thompson. Mr. Auditor, any other further discussion? Mr. Auditor, roll call vote.
Ms. Burnett?
Aye.
Mr. Schweitzer?
Aye.
Mr. Mann?
Aye.
Ms. Swager?
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk?
Nay.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Mr. Morris?
Aye. Okay, Mr. Loudermilk, 2020-07?
Yes.
Or 2020-09, pardon
Yes.
me.
Now before us, salary ordinance 2020-09. Assistant Superintendent. The ordinance is contained on page 27 in your booklet. And essentially what's being asked here is to delete the position. So I guess we need an amendment also to this, to strike Vigo County General Fund and have the amended language Highway Fund before we can delete the position.
Okay.
So I make the motion to make that amendment to salary ordinance 2020-09 at this time.
Second.
Mr. Pro Tem, take over from that.
So there's a motion on the floor and a second. Any further discussion? No further discussion, Mr. Auditor. Ask for a roll call vote.
Ms. Burnett?
We've got a technical issue. Can we discuss real quick? If you're going to eliminate that position, Bobby's still in that position.
Bobby's going to superintendent tomorrow.
Okay.
Assuming you're appointing him.
I'm the only guy here.
Bobby, tell him to sit down.
No.
I'm being like Jim right now. I'm crossing my eyes and doing whatever else, but I mean,
I'm not comfortable getting rid of somebody that's
I'm not
still in a
either.
position.
Then you change the effective date. Can you make it effective, or amended, to effective date next?
Yeah, you can amend the effective date.
Taking your truck.
We on assistant
I'll take you home,
superintendent?
Bobby.
I mean,
That's something
Can we
to
not,
think
can we not
about.
just wait till?
can we not do this one next month? Can we just table this one?
Yes. Are you okay with that, please? Thank you. Okay, I'm going back here now.
So,
You gotta get rid of the motion,
Well, why don't you make
Well,
it
we have an
effective
amendment.
next month?
or you gotta get
Just
rid of
amending it.
the amendment.
So you can withdraw.
Just take the amendment off so we can then have a discussion.
Council President Morris,
Yes.
I withdraw my motion to amend salary ordinance 2020-09.
And the purpose of is to vote on this next month?
I like the idea of putting an effective date on it, and then we're done with it.
Just make it effective next.
Yeah, but doesn't the one position have to be advertised?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, put an effective date if it needs to be advertised for 10 days or whatever, let's make it deleted effective,
He's back.
But that still gets rid of a person.
not until this takes effect.
With that position, since that's an appointed position by the commissioners, does that make a difference? Because we've been having this discussion a lot.
Well, there,
Huh? Well, our HR director, our new HR director, thank you, will be here tomorrow. But that, she's not here right now. Yeah, but I think that's from our discussions before that,
it's a political appointment,
Yep.
it's year to year,
yep,
so technically you could put him in there, superintendent tomorrow, and
but I'm the only one
Yeah,
here.
there's no,
Oh, Judy won't, well, you can do it at the end, when Brad and Judy come back.
I'd rather do it officially at the meeting because that's to me
Yeah.
the right thing to do. But it's just like with Larry, he's an appointment also, right? Yeah, so I think we can just appoint it. Because-
Make it effective night.
Okay,
Thank you.
yeah,
That's not.
Let's see, will they be,
we're all going to be here next week, I think. Is that right, Tammy? Are we all scheduled?
Better.
I'm not.
Howard, you're not.
Judy's
gonna
away at a
be-
conference, and I was away at a conference too, but I came back for this meeting because it's so important to me. I'm tired.
All right.
Mr.
Yes,
President, I
we
move
can
to
appoint-
table Sally Ordinance 2020-09.
Motion made to
No,
table.
no, no. Are we gonna table this one?
Motion made to table it. Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a second. Motion made and seconded, moved by Mr. Mann, second by Ms. Burnett. 2020-09 to table. Any other questions? Mr. Auditor, roll call.
Ms. Burnett,
Aye.
Mr. Schweitzer,
Aye.
Mr. Mann,
Aye.
Ms. Weger,
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk,
Aye.
Mr. Thompson,
Aye.
Mr. Morris.
Nay. Okay. Show that salary ordinance 2020-09 is tabled. 6-1 vote. Mr. Loudermilk, thank you very much. Keep us going.
Moving right along. Additional appropriation ordinance 2020-03 GIS Department. The request is on page 28 in your booklet.
Okay.
This is the appropriation to fund the positions you previously approved.
Okay. I would entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Loudermilk, second by Ms. Bager. Are there any other questions? Hearing none, roll call vote, Mr. Auditor.
Ms. Burnett,
Aye.
Mr. Schweitzer,
Aye.
Mr. Mann,
Aye.
Ms. Wager,
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk.
Aye.
Thompson.
Aye.
Mr. Morris.
Aye. Mr. Loudermilk.
Yes. Additional appropriation ordinance 2020-04, contained on page 29. Pertains to engineering fund. Request $20,822.
No amendments needed.
Hope we're on the right track again.
I think we're safe.
Motion to approve 2020-04.
Motion approved by Ms. Wager, seconded by Mr. Thompson. Are there any other questions? Hearing none, roll call vote, Mr. Auditor.
Ms. Burnett,
Aye.
Mr. Schweitzer,
Aye.
Mr. Mann.
Aye.
Ms. Wager,
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk.
Aye.
Mr. Thompson.
Aye.
Mr. Morris.
Aye. Mr. Loudermilk.
Yes. Reduction appropriation ordinance 2020-01, page 30 in your booklets. We have County Fund General relating to the Auditor's Office, Auditor's Fund, and also one relating to area planning. The total for the auditor, $69,267. The total for area planning, $66,411, with an overall total out of county general funds, $135,678. Before we move forward, I just for clarification for my purposes, we have the advertised amounts, and then we have an appropriated column that is all zeros. Should those appropriated items mimic the advertised totals? So at the bottom, we come out to essentially a negative 135,678. To show that that's an appropriate reduction.
That would make sense.
Because otherwise, the way it reads to me, there's no reduction. I mean, is that a fair assessment?
Well, the advertised as well as the appropriated.
You would need to appropriate, you can just
That was
advertise
an
negative.
Technically, I don't think it's
Advertise
ad, you know.
And it probably should be requested. Either appropriate, just do it appropriate.
Wouldn't you advertise a
You
negative
don't,
instead of
well,
advertising
I don't,
positive?
you don't advertise a reduction. It's not
We don't have to advertise reductions. Okay. All right with this?
So I guess, yeah, I think it's appropriate to amend this to say requested as opposed to advertised, and then put negative figures in the columns.
Okay. Negatives. Okay, I'd entertain an amendment to this appropriation.
Council President Morris, I apologize. I'd offer an amendment to the reduction appropriation ordinance 2020-01. The first column where it states advertised, I would offer the amendment as reduction, or I'm sorry, requested. And in the appropriated column, all those lines to correspond with the requested number, but as a negative number.
Oh.
No.
They should be positive. Both of them should be positive.
Should be
Mid positive in both columns, right?
Because
Yeah.
if you look at the section one and say hereby
thrown in the towel.
So the title should be reduced, not requested?
Oh, we're doing
For
good.
that second?
That's fine, is requested, is a requested reduction.
Okay.
How
But also, if that's the case, then where it says appropriate, you should say reduction of appropriate.
Column appropriated said should be reduction of appropriated.
Reduction. Appropriation reduction.
Appropriation reduction. Okay. Okay with that, Mr. Loudermilk?
What are you calling it?
Appropriation reduction.
And then the numbers should also transfer to it.
And all the numbers transferred. Okay.
So where are we putting this?
We're taking it away.
Right, but what are we changing are we changing section 1, or are we changing the numbers?
You're changing the heading, the headings on both columns, the requested and approved appropriation reduction for the second column.
With the numbers.
Approved appropriation
Reduction.
And those corresponding numbers are replaced with zeros.
So there's no need for parentheses or negative signs or anything. By changing the vocabulary, we get.
We know what it means.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Okay. So is that a motion? Did you make that, Mr. Loudermilk?
I can. The header for the first column be stricken from advertised to requested. The header in the second column, strike the word appropriated, and amend the language to approved appropriation reduction. And then all the corresponding numbers in the approved appropriation reduction should mirror what is in the requested column, so that we reach a total from the auditor's office of $69,267, a total in area planning of $66,411, and a total of county general fund of $135,678.
Second. Moved by Mr. Loudermilk, seconded by Mr. Thompson. Questions? Hearing none, roll call vote. Mr. Auditor?
Ms. Bennett?
Aye.
Mr. Schweitzer?
Aye.
Mr. Mann?
Aye.
Swager?
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk?
Aye.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Mr. Morris?
Aye. Is there a motion to adopt the amended ordinance?
So moved.
I move to table. Oh, wait a minute. Forget that. Ignore me.
Okay.
Ignore me.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
A second.
Moved by Mr. Loudermilk, seconded by Mr. Thompson. Question? Hearing none, roll call vote. Mr. Auditor?
Ms. Bennett?
Aye.
Mr. Schweitzer?
Aye.
Mr. Mann?
Aye.
Swager?
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk?
Aye.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Mr. Morris?
Aye. Next.
Yes. Reduction of appropriation 2020-02, Highway Administration. It's contained on page 31 of your booklet.
Mr. President,
Yes.
this one needs to be tabled, am I correct? Because we did not move on it. So I move to table reduction of appropriation ordinance 2020-02.
Is there a second? Ms. Bennett? Is that you? Oh. Ms. Wager? Moved by Mr. Mann, seconded by Ms. Wager. Okay. Mr. Auditor, roll call vote, please.
Ms. Bennett?
Aye.
Mr. Schweitzer?
Aye.
Mr. Mann?
Aye.
Swager?
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk?
Aye.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Mr. Morris?
Aye. Thank you, people.
Thank you. If I may, Mr. Morris, Mr. President.
Absolutely.
On that one, I believe auditor is going to have to be changed when it's
believe they are.
redone. and the wording that Mr. Loudermilk provided when it comes back up, so just so we remember.
Yep.
All that, but I don't think auditor
Right.
is going to be appropriate.
Okay.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you. Good work, council. Lot of work. Sorry that we've been here quite so long, but I think we did good work. Okay, honorary resolutions, none. First reading by summary reference, important resolutions. I've got 20-09 prosecutor, 20-10 prosecutor, 20-11 prosecutor, 20-12 prosecutor. All four items, personnel department. You guys got it. You got a list of that, right? Okay. Appointments. I appoint Bill Bryan to the Alcohol and Beverage Commission. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
All those in favor, by aye.
Aye.
Good work, gentlemen, ladies. Sorry.
Surely.
But it should not negatively impact what you're doing. So when it comes budget time, we can look, we can see all that.
What about the ones that we changed?
Okay. No, I don't. But these are all minutes that
Good one,
were
huh?
approved from last time, and various ones that did pass.